Hydrofield cuts through my neighborhood.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearlessly Authentic. We have an awesome special guest tonight. It is her first time on the show. Here's Karyn, aka Sage. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And that's what I said to you before. I think you should have your head examined, but I'm so happy to be here and talk to you. And hang out.
Well, maybe I need to, I don't think about, like, people in our community as nobodies. I think about you that everybody has something that's, you know what I mean, like everybody has parts of them that are just like that stand out, and there's a reason why, you know what I mean, we became friends, and so, like, I like to highlight that and like showcase that, and like put a face to the name in the community.
And I love that you do, and I love that you are so open, and you'll have anybody on, and you have such an amazing intellectual curiosity. And no, I do affectionately call myself a mouthy little nobody, but I'm very grateful that you want to talk to mouthy little nobodies. So just someone else shouting into the abyss that is Twitter. But this is awesome to just hang out with you and react to the madness that has become our world.
I know. And it's like, I get questions like, well, why do you focus so much on these things? And I'm like, I'm a woman, and our rights and our existence throughout my entire life, and generations and generations that before us have always been threatened. Like I have fought for my existence in this world since I entered it. I came in like with a vengeance and like ready to, like, like not bow down, unless I'm, bowing down to help support children and other women and other people that are in need. Like, that is inherently who I am, is sticking up for the little guy, sticking up for people that, you know what I mean, that need that, and just trying to be as authentic as I can in what I'm doing and while I'm doing it.
And you do, and it's beautiful. And I think that a large part of the problem right now, in terms of like the public perception of some of what we're seeing, is that it's exactly like what you said. Like, everyone loves an underdog, right? Like, we're conditioned to kind of like, we want righteousness and we want justice. And the problem is that it's not people that are the enemy, but there is a bit of an ideological capture that is sort of weaponizing things like empathy and victimhood and concepts like marginalization and things like that to manufacture consent for some pretty troubling things that are actually hurting in a material way women, for sure. But I don't think it actually just stops at women. I think it's certainly children, men, and actual trans and LGBT people. And I think that's what's not being allowed to. Sorry, my greyhound's coming in.
Oh, like, this is my debut on the Lucky Burrito Show.
He was like, enough, me.
Oh,
that's Mossy. We've had him about a month.
Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
But anyway, no, what I was trying to say is I think that, like, the concept of fighting for justice has taken on such a a perversion of late and is doing so much harm. And if you speak out against it, and you know this, of course,
all too well,
you're going to be labeled. Well, the thing, no, me too. I mean, anyone who is doing that is what's happening, which one is completely intellectually dishonest, but beyond that, it renders those terms completely meaningless. Now, if I hear somebody's like, oh, they're a TERF, they're a bigot, they're a Nazi, I'm like, they sound based. Like, I need to follow that. You know what I mean? Like, it's having the opposite effect, and it's creating the way that they are going about this so much more resistance, so much more hostility. And I think there's a bunch of different agendas at play. I think there's a bunch of different forces at play, because I think it's a complete misstep also to assume that this movement that we sort of call like trans activism or gender ideology is just some big unified front. That's not true either. There's infighting in there and there's clashes in there, but I think that they sort of patch together with like duct tape and prayer this something trying to resemble a cohesion to advance the end agenda, which I guess is up for speculation as to exactly what that is, but I don't think we're heading in any kind of good direction.
Yeah, and just talking honestly about things doesn't mean, like, in standing up for women's rights or children's rights doesn't mean I'm standing against somebody else's rights.
No,
it literally, it's the same ideology. It's the same thing as like when somebody says, oh, if you vote for X person, that means that we're going to get X person, this other person. And it's like, no, that's not how that works either. Like that's not how it works. If I stand up for women's rights and children's rights, as I always have my entire life, then that's what I'm doing. I'm not doing something against another group or against another, you know what I mean? Like, it's not against anybody. It's just standing up for people. And, you know, and then like I'll bring up, like, I'll say, well, you know, I have people that are transsexual in my life, and I have for many years. My daughter met one of my friends that was transsexual when she was 6 years old. Wow. And I repeated and I believed a lot of the things that I hear people lump together and say, because like you were saying, like, you want to have that acceptance, and like, you know, it was about being inclusive and you know, protecting the marginalized, and you know what I mean, and having that protection. But some people are taking things too far, and like, if we don't put our foot down and draw a line and say, wait a minute, like, that's too far, then that's an issue. Then we're not actually for the rights. You know what I mean? It's wiping away someone else's rights. That is actually doing that.
It's also interesting too that the people who are in that community who are absolutely trans, like people like Buck Angel, Blair White, Marcus Dibbs. I've probably just triggered all the libs by even saying those names. But it's interesting that like their voices suddenly don't matter. You know, we hear like, listen to trans people. Oh, except those. And the reason is because they're trans, but they're not politically trans. That's the problem.
And also there's a growing number of detransitioners, and I'm in contact with many of them. And like, you know, I definitely have reached out, and I'm looking to have some of them on the show. But like, it's like saying, hey, do you want to come on and talk about like this really traumatic thing that happened to you? Like, do you feel comfortable talking about something that was really dramatic and really traumatic to you? I'm trying to do it with sensitivity. And I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk with them so that I can bring on people that have, you know, like, so people have better understanding. And that's why I'm exploring this topic so much, is because it matters. I want to dive into it and really give it everything, because coming from like more of like on a left lens of it, and but also being nonpartisan, you know what I mean, like having like the inherently left values, you know, that most people that say that they're on the left, like that they believe in, but coming from a place of compassion and truth at the same time. I feel like it's really important to do that, to come from, you know what I mean, that side, and not just have people that are, you know, that have completely, you know, a different viewpoint on it, be the only one speaking out about it. I feel like we need to have some balance in that. And I mean, I might be wrong. I would love to know if other people are really diving into this topic and really covering this. I would love to know, because when I look for information, I'm usually finding more conservative people that are talking about it. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a rights issue, this is a women's issue, this is children, this is a men's issue, this is a society issue.
100%.
And like we need to have acknowledgement and coverage of it from, you know what I mean, the other side of it too, kind of like the you know.
biggest mistake that the left could make, and I say this as a lifelong leftist, the left is brilliant at making mistakes. But I think the biggest mistake the left could make with regards to this is ceding the opposition to it to the right. That's a big mistake, but that is what I see happening. You know, you name me, if there is one, please tell me, because I want to know who they are. But I cannot think of one politician, political organization, NGO that is in any way the accepted left that is even willing to define what a woman is. That's a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
When all of the standing up for women is coming from the conservative, the right, well, good, you're just pushing women to the right. I mean,
People are leaving the left.
absurd.
People are leaving the left because of this. This issue is huge. It's hurting people's kids, and people are starting to see it. And there is a shift that I'm seeing with people moving more to a conservative side of it.
You know, because I've said, it's sort of half joking, but you know, within every joke there is some truth. I have said, you know, if I decide to vote, which is a big if, I don't really plan to vote.
Yeah, I'm not voting anymore.
if I were going to, I'm like, you know what? Can I swear, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Like, fuck all of you. I will vote for the candidate that at least can tell me what a woman is in a way that does not sound like it is coming from an inpatient psych unit. Okay, I want a definition that lives in objective reality, and that does not mean that you don't want trans people to have rights and healthcare and housing and you know, not be discriminated against, because I think every sane person would say, like, yes, of course. But at the same time, that cannot come at the expense of women, children, and every societal norm that we have, right? So yeah, I mean, that's been my thing. I'm like, oh, well, if I vote, like, who can tell me what a woman is? That's who I'll vote for, which would probably mean that I would vote red for the first time in my entire life.
Yeah, I've never voted red. Never
in my life. Never. I never even thought that I would entertain a thought like that. But I think it's good. The people that like you and I guess like myself, who were not so willing to relinquish our morality to a political designation, can actually be like, oh, wait a second, there is some stuff going on here. You know, and I'll get asked like, oh, like, I didn't realize you became a right winger. I did not become a right winger. The left has lost its mind. I stayed put. I did not move. Right. And I looked around and the left is like literally off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's talking about 2 + 2 = 5 and men are breastfeeding. I don't know. I missed a memo.
I know. I feel the same way. And that brings us like perfectly to what we're going to be talking about tonight. Because, you know, there are men breastfeeding and the CDC has come out in support of this.
Well,
so we know how we all feel about.
So I'm just gonna say this, and I know it's YouTube, and I know I have to be really careful here. However,
innuendos are great for this.
If the CDC is giving its Stunning and Brave stamp of approval for something, maybe that don't mean like the opposite is totally true.
Yeah. So this is from the Daily Mail, and this is from the 5th of July. So the CDC accused of blurring politics and scientists over the advice that suggests trans women can safely breastfeed, but fails to mention health risks to baby. And that, okay, and this is the thing that really gets me, okay? It's the health risks to the baby that is my biggest concern. And it is the thing that is not being addressed. That is the biggest concern to me is, me. Okay. I breastfed for 2.5 years with my daughter. And you're actually pregnant more than 9 months. I actually went for 42 weeks of pregnancy because she was 2 weeks past due. So,
I was 2 weeks late too.
Not see.
Yeah, I think my mother her
name was going to be Sage. It was either going to be Sky or Sage.
Oh.
Yeah. And I ended up going with Skyla. When I heard that name, I was like, that's her name. But yeah, so like I went literally years of my life where I watched everything that went in my body. Like I couldn't just like pick up Tylenol if I, if I was hurting or if I needed like something. I couldn't, I couldn't take medications. Like I literally took just prenatal vitamins and stuff. And why is that important? Well, because I had a herniated disc that was flat on flat that needed surgery. I needed major back surgery when I got pregnant with my daughter. And I decided that, I was going to go through with it and I was going to have her because I was told that it would be probably hard for me to have kids to begin with. And so I saw it as like, oh my gosh, like she is like, this is like, my miracle baby. Like that's like, because I was told I would probably never have kids. So I wasn't taking any chances. And so, I mean, I changed my entire diet. I couldn't take medications. I couldn't eat certain foods. I mean, you can't eat seafoods. You can't eat like sushis. You can't eat lunch meats. You can't eat more than like, a can of tuna a week or whatever. Like you have to watch everything that you're doing during that entire time. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't take pain medications for my herniated disc that was, I literally lost a 1/2 inch of height because my disc was bone to bone. And I gave birth with it like that. And I continued afterwards and had my daughter and breastfed without taking pain meds because that mattered that much to me. I sacrificed a lot in order to be able to do that for her for as long as I did. And it was to give her the benefit of what she needed. And that was more important to me.
Are you then saying that like you're slightly offended by like this pus-filled affirmation fluid that's being pumped into? Is that where we're going?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'm just like, to me, I'm like, what a parent does is to sacrifice, right? Like you purposefully.
This one on the screen. Oh God.
I know it's the cow. That is not what they call themselves that. They call it cow mode. This is a male to female transgender.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. So there's so much to say on this. First of all, if we are to, by their own claim, you know, they want to be women, they want to be perceived as women and clearly mothers, and they want to have all of the experience that would embody, and that would include, obviously, for many women, something like breastfeeding. But above that, the biggest thing that a mother does is sacrifice their own ambitions for their child. So they're actually, by engaging in this, you're sort of doing the most antithetical female behavior, because why are they not saying, you know what, maybe this is technically possible, maybe it doesn't harm the child. I'll go with them. Yeah, fine, for the sake of argument, maybe it doesn't harm the child. One, that's not the same as it being a net benefit. And two, as a mother, then you want to do the best thing for your child. I don't have any kids, and I know that. Like I had said to you backstage, if somebody looks at my dog sideways, it's like it's on. So it's something that's just typically very innate, and that maternal instinct, it might be for children, it might be for animals, whatever it is. But this is the complete opposite of anything like that. This is, I want biological affirmation. I want to feel good. I want this experience. It's all I don't hear anything about the child. And again, technology wise, okay, maybe you can do this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's to be done. Just because we can do something doesn't mean it's to be done. I think that's from like a Chris Rock special, like way back in the day. But it's so true. Like, okay, this thing exists. Like, well, can we talk about if this, like, it is a net good? You know, it's kind of weird, and it's creepy, and it seems to, for a lot of them, at least from what we're seeing on Twitter, have a very strong fetish element.
Yeah. I have some of that for farther on in the story. And I understand that people might be upset that this is like the Daily Mail or whatever, but here's the thing. I have seen actual Twitter posts from this actual account, this actual person, and we'll get into what they've done more. Like, I've verified this information before I even saw this Daily Mail article that covered this as well. So like, this isn't just like from just them. I you know, this person, the Daily Mail got these pictures from the person's actual Twitter account, and they have OnlyFans as well, and that's where they also do this, and they call it like cow mode or something. I have another image to show that.
Is that really what they call it?
Yeah, they dress up like a cow.
What?
Yeah, that's, I mean, whatever. If it's your fetish,
any mother would.
I know, right? Yeah, no, I never dressed up like a cow. But I have empathy for cows because of, you know, what I personally did to feed my own child. You know what I mean? I think about like, wow, you know, like we're kind of doing the same like that. I'm like, man, what happens? Like, I joked around about it a bunch. I'm like, what happens like when one day like they're just gonna like be like, we realize that, you know, like we like I was telling you before backstage, like I was in a group called we called ourselves Crunchy Crew. And we were a bunch of like, you know, crunchy as in granola, you know what I mean? Like hippie kind of like moms that like we wore our babies as in we used wraps and stuff or papooses. We co-slept. We were just very like in tune with our children, parenting, pro breastfeeding. We helped each other out. And this was just like a natural group of women that just kind of like formed, and that I have like, forever bonds and relationships with these women. And we would have women's only like nights, like, and we would all just like talk about whatever. It was very therapeutic, and it was something that was like just so beautiful to have, especially like after having my daughter. But yeah, like, so, like, this is
Well,
something.
just to tell you, I'm sure there's something in there that's like rooted in white supremacy, but yeah, continue.
I'm sure. But
There's
yeah, so
microaggressions in there.
there must be. So yeah, this has come about because this stuff was actually, it was on Twitter. Other people covered it too, but like, this is just one of the articles. And this is another.
Can you just stop? Can you look at this infant's face? Can we please, like, this is like smashed up against.
Yeah, it doesn't look
like,
safe.
There is nothing serene. There is nothing like that child's like being affirmation waterboarded. Like, I don't know what's happening there. That's nothing good.
And okay, and so also men don't naturally get like lactation in milk. Usually the reasons it happens is a side effect of medications. They can have a tumor on the pituitary gland. Or another reason that it happens is from severe starvation. Like, they've uncovered this with like prisoners of war. The men would start lactating because of the hormones imbalance, because they were starved. So like, usually this is not a usual occurrence that males can do this, and it's heartbreaking to me.
I don't. I mean, you want to talk about ideological capture, like. The fact that we are, that social media is embroiled in this debate, the fact that we're sitting here talking about this, I mean, that's kind of like that's just like a dystopian hell. Like, I don't understand. I never thought I'd be having this conversation.
No. Exactly. I never thought that I would be having a conversation about a male breastfeeding. It was never
weird that, like, and to me, this has nothing to do with trans, right? This is something else, because lovely, rational transsexuals who just want to emulate the opposite, the social role of the opposite sex and be perceived that way and assimilate into society and just get on with life, has nothing to do with this kind of shit. Like, this just seems like, yes, of course, a fetish, and we can get into like autogynephilia and all of that kind of stuff, but like, when in the hell did like biology become the new glass ceiling to be shattered? Like, what do we just, we're out of ideas. We have so much fucking social equality that now it's like biology, that's next.
Yeah, and I've heard people talking about how in school the professors, and like it's leaching into colleges, it's leaching into high school, like with biology now. Like, they're adding all this, you know what I mean, all this entire agenda into it. I mean, we are literally poisoned by our food, our water, our air, our medicine. You know what I mean? Like the schools are poisoned. Like, we're poisoned from every direction, and nobody's exempt from it. You've gotten it, or you will get it one way or another. There's no escaping it at this point. And I have to look at this and go, wow, okay, well, we have all these big, corporations backing this. We have corporations pushing this. We have the CDC pushing this. We have they have, when during Pride at the White House, they have people shaking their fake freaking boobs on the screen, and like, imagine the outrage if it wasn't, you know what I mean. Like, if it wasn't a transgender person that did it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's just amazing how much it is really coming from the top down. And you know what's interesting too, because I up until very recently, like the way that I was looking at not just this, but like you know, we bleed into all of the social justice stuff and everything. And I thought like, okay, it really seems like the culture war has kind of cannibalized the class war, but actually it's almost like it's the other way around, because what's happening is the politics of sort of the top 10% are being obscured to present as class politics of the masses. Do you know what I mean? So it's very easy. You're like, oh, well, you're fighting for like the marginalized and this. Well, in a certain sense, because of course, like, are there, you know, poor and disenfranchised like trans people? 100, of course there are. But
yeah.
at the same time, you're talking about, oh, marginalized communities. Yes, marginalized communities that have institutional backings of power. So we can get into marginalized people versus a marginalized ideology or group as a whole, which is typically being used for a political pawn, and people fall for it, right? And then you get all this. But this ideology really sort of, the class lens they put on it is artificial. You know what I mean? It's like, look at all the celebrities that have, oh, trans child, like it's the new, like the Birkin bag, right? Or like
Yeah,
it's
well, I mean, think about like all the body modification that happened in like the 90s. There was girls getting nose jobs and boob jobs, and like
yeah,
it's like when it's entire friend groups going to a gender clinic all at the same time, we have to understand that, wait a minute, something's happening. This isn't that this statistically, it is not a small, the percentage used to be small and it's growing and growing and growing. I heard numbers, like if you look on Scott Nugent's Nugent.com, like Scott is a trans man that, you know, stands up against the medicalization of children now, and transitioned as an adult and realized like what is happening. And like every time I hear Scott's story, it breaks my heart. You know,
no, I
Scott,
can't get through it without crying.
yeah,
Personally.
me too. And I'm just like, this is not okay. This is, people are hurting. People are hurting, and it's obvious that people are hurting. And when we can't talk about it, and you know, and you get called all kinds of names for talking about it, and it's like, I'm not coming from a place of hate at all.
No.
I have transsexual people in my life. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't want any harm on anybody. That's the problem.
I had a conversation, and this was well over 10 years ago, probably more like 15 years ago. Before living where I live now. I was in a performance group. I've been a dancer for the better part of my life, and I was always a theater kid, and so queer and all that was never. And I'm not using queer as a slur. I mean just that kind of like gay, like non-conforming, whatever, was never something that I had to learn to accept. I don't remember a time ever not having that kind of thing like in my life. You know, my mother's been with a woman for almost 30 years, and growing up, her best friend was a gay man. It was I never had to like assimilate myself into thinking
it was. It
wasn't a big deal, and it was a thing. But when I was in my performance group, one of my fellow dancers, her husband was trans man, and this was back in like 2009 or so, when I was in the cabaret and burlesque scene, and it was full of gender non-conforming and gay and straight and whatever. But I remember he and I once just organically were talking about his transition. It was the only time it ever came up because it was just never relevant, because it was just, he was him, and that was like no big deal. But I remember asking, like, oh, what is the process for that? Like, I'm just curious. And he said, oh, well, it's pretty intense, actually. He said, first you go to a therapist, you have to be in therapy for a solid year, and then your second year in therapy, they say, okay, let's have you now do a year living as the opposite sex. So it's 2 years of therapy. One is just talk, the other is talk and living as the opposite gender. Once you complete that, you can get into things like hormones, like the surgery, all of that. But he said, oh yeah, it's a painstaking process. And I remember asking him, like, is that annoying? And he was like, I don't see another ethical way to do it. You have to make sure, this is a huge life change, and it is what it is. It takes the time that it takes. What was wrong with that?
I don't know, because I had friend around that same time period. The first person that I met that was a transsexual, and same thing. It was exactly how you described it. I mean, it was years of like therapy of being grilled. Like, are you sure? Why do you feel this way?
Therapist, not no one within it. There should be no agenda in the medical space, right? Yeah. That shouldn't even have to be said, right? You go to therapy. If your therapist is just there to affirm you, like, sorry, that's not care. That's like relinquishing care. That's abdicating care. That's nothing. By that logic, like, we can be gender affirming therapists. You're trans. Oh, yay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know any other like care that you go and you just get affirmation care. No. Like, where else in there in the medical industry is it that you just go and get an affirmation care? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I honestly don't. You know what I mean? Like, you can go and like you can go to a surgeon and get affirmed that you can have the, you know what I mean, that you have like, oh, I want to get a nose job, or I want to get a tummy tuck, or whatever. Like, you can get affirmation that the doctor can say, sure, I'll charge you money to cut you up and fix that for you. But honestly, like, what other, and even then you have to be of you know what I mean, of a certain health, and you know what I mean, like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if there's anything else.
I think that the lockdowns had a lot to do with what we're seeing now, and I think the increase of disconnection from community and increased isolation and increased sense of just sort of hopelessness, like, what is the future? Are we on the brink of nuclear war? Will I have a job? And even if I do, can I even survive off of that? And everything just feels very disembodied, that you end up creating this universe that's almost just like in your head and online. And that's where we get into the things like words are violence, and words are akin to action, and how you can now feel harmed by encountering an opinion you don't like, because everything is so removed from like a human connection. And I think that is also happening with identity. You say it, you are it. It's rootless. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very strange phenomenon. And to me, it has nothing to do with the person you were describing, the person I was describing, people like Buck, where it that is a completely separate thing. There's a difference between transitioning to flee something and flee the world, and transitioning to go towards something and be able to walk and be and integrate into the world, two very different things. And when it comes to the kids, I think we're seeing a hell of a lot of fleeing.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that there's, like, from the detransitioners and people who have, what I mean, that I've spoken to, it's like there's always certain things that they repeat. They repeat how nobody can make fun of you now. Like, you're almost like, what I mean? It's like you take the kids that get beat up or whatever, or bullied, and you give them something that, like, no, now they're protected. They are protected.
Yep.
They're in charge.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They feel empowered. They feel in charge, and they're celebrated. And it's like I think that what you're hinting at is that there is a major disconnect that's happening.
It's a major disconnect, yeah.
And like it's parent to child as well. There's a disconnect that's happening. Like when I used to work at a homeless shelter, it was for families. I would try to like get the parents to like do crafts with the kids, not me doing crafts with the kids. I wanted the parents to sit down with their kids and color, or sit down and do the crafts with them, because there was a disconnect where like the parents would be there, like they would be in the same room and they would be with them,
engaged.
but they weren't engaged. They weren't participating in their children, and it brought them back to like that bonding together. You know what I mean? And I feel like we're missing some of that, and some of that disconnect happens because we have the computers and like kids are really young getting phones now. Like my daughter, like I don't even remember, she was I think she was like maybe 14 or 15 by the time she got her first phone. And like, parents now, I mean, they're like at 11, they're like giving their kids phones late. You know what I mean? Like that's like insane to me. But like, she's 19 now, but like, I mean, kids are with a tablet or something younger and younger and younger, and it's a disconnect. And then they're like disconnecting them from in the school. Like you can transition socially at school and we won't tell your parents. And I'm not supportive of that. I feel like,
I mean, we could have an entire episode about teachers and what is happening in the schools. It is unbelievable. You see those TikToks that like teachers will do about how they're like queering their classroom, and my God, does the child know how to read? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is so
like we're not teaching real life skills to these kids. Like they don't know how to change a tire or check the oil in their car, or like cook food.
No.
But they'll know 117 different genders.
Well, and I think the other thing too, is that, so you've certainly got the social contagion element. Like, I think there's a lot of different things at play. The social contagion element is one thing. I also think, when you have, intentionally or not, a school curriculum and a culture really that is telling kids the worst thing you can be is straight and white, never mind being a boy, right? But like being a straight white male, that is the worst of all worlds. You are instantly an oppressor. You need to apologize. If you think that telling a generation that indirectly or directly does not have consequences, you're wrong. We've seen what happens when, we went through a period where it was like, we don't need to teach girls to read. They don't need to know math. Well, that had consequences. And likewise, when you tell, young boys being a straight white male is the worst thing, and there's just nothing redeeming about you, and you're trash and you're ridiculous, that has consequences.
All of it does. Absolutely all of it does. And it's like, I don't even, it's so hard to fathom, like just because it comes from like every angle. And yeah, Stevie, I think that most crimes are like, there are a lot of things, like especially like assaults and things like that, come from close friends and family. They're people that you usually, it's usually people that you know. I don't know the exact statistics, but I do know that, that is true. And usually it's the people that you trust in your community, right? Like, why are there so many, like, there's a lot of priests that have access to kids, there's a lot of teachers that have access to kids, that people go into those fields. Like, I love kids. I would not do anything to freaking harm a kid. I would freaking, jump out in front of a car to save a kid without even thinking about it, because that's just my instinct to want to help them and want to protect them. But that's not where everybody's at. Some people interject themselves into those situations because they want to have access to your kid. So the more disconnected we are, the more access they have.
This is true. And also, I think for some of these teachers who were kind of like true believers in all this, they actually believe that they are saving kids by trying to get a kid, a gender confused kid, away from like their toxic family or their, what, you know what I mean? It's like there is so much ideology that is now in education. It's no longer just like, well, yep, some people are straight, some people are gay, some people are bi, some people are trans, and you go through life, you figure it out, and now open your books because we're gonna jump back into the Odyssey. Like, that is not happening.
No.
Everything was centered around this.
And like in California, there was a kid that was taken from a mother because she didn't want to do affirmation care. And, I will warn you guys, like, it didn't end well. The state took the child. The child ended up, like, they medically transformed, like, they medically transitioned this child without the mother's help, because they said it was like affirmation care. And then the child ended up committing suicide. So this mother, like, had her child taken away from her, and then her child committed suicide later on after all of that. So, like, it's not us being cautious and careful and worrying about these children and these families and what they're going to go through isn't being hateful. It's clearly the opposite. It is like, slow down. Let's figure this out. Why is it happening? What is going on? What is causing this? Because the numbers are going through the roof. And I just know that we're going to have, people might think that we're alarmist or that we're speaking out about something that's a very small percentage of people. But I will tell you right now, we are ahead of this. We are like on the verge of realizing how bad this is.
Yeah.
This isn't going away. It's not slowing down.
And even if it's like technically a small percentage of people, the ideology of it is in every corporation and every academic institution, and it's in the government, and it's in every nonprofit, and that is all happening. So, again, I think that and I hesitate to use the word, but I will. It's not like people, Twitter especially, everyone loves to talk about fascism. I do it too, but it is not going to look the way that it looks in the history books, because we're not in that time. It's going to look very different. And so
they didn't have the internet the way that we do. And
it's very different. But I think an authoritarian measure is an authoritarian measure, whether it is coming from the left or from the right, and I think actually the left would be able to be more effective, because the left has the social category of being kind and being tolerant and being progressive and being benevolent. So when you have that, it as the default, it's like, oh, well, that's the left, and they're so sweet, and they're so progressive, and they love LGBT, and they care about kids, anything can be perverted and weaponized. And I think that's what's happening. People love to talk about political realignment. I certainly do. And it's all well and good to talk about it, but then sometimes when you're actually seeing it in real time, people default to the teams that they always know. Oh no, no, there's real realignment. I mean, again, I am certainly not about to sit up here and praise the Republican Party. However, objective reality, they seem to be the ones standing against this. They seem to be more anti-war than the accepted left, so call it what you will. It's like, well, I come at me if you want, but I'm just saying, like, this is objectively what's happening. And you can say, oh, they're doing it for the wrong reasons, or I'm not getting into any of that. I'm just saying it is objectively what's happening, though, right? So
yeah, like I have friends of mine, I have people like that I talk to in real life that are telling me, yeah, I took my kid out of school because they're letting, boys into the girls' bathroom, and my daughter is shy and she didn't know what to do. So I pulled her out of school. So what about the kids that, you know what I mean? Like what happens there? You know what I mean? Like, kids are going to fall through the cracks. Some kids need to have school. Some, like, a lot of parents are pulling their kids out and doing homeschool now because of like what's happening. And that's only going to be who can afford to do it and who has the setup of it. Like, who, you know what I mean? Because you can't just have a young kid. You can't just pull them out. And then what? Like, if you have to work, you know what I mean? Like, the reason why we have schools to begin with, a lot of parents use school as, kind of like almost like a babysitter for the majority of the day.
After school, yeah, 100%. And what's so sad to me too is that, you and I were both teenagers in the 90s. That was like the fuck all labels mentality. We were gender bending all over the place.
Yeah. Like, that was just what it was. Like, so.
And yet we never felt the need to try to flee our biology, try to flee the objective reality of our bodies. But I had guy friends in high school that would sometimes come to school in a dress. You know what I mean? And it was fine. It was fine. This is the thing I don't understand. It is such a deeply regressive movement. If there are infinite ways to be a boy, to be a girl, to be a man, to be a woman, then why in the fuck do you need 97 genders, right? Like, you don't. We're selling the binary as this weird oppressive force when it's like, yeah, but do whatever you want, but live in reality. There is a beautiful freedom to reality, right? And so I don't understand. We didn't label anything, non-binary or demi-boy, whatever all of these things are. We didn't micro-categorize everything. We were just us.
Yeah. I was like a tomboy or whatever,
yeah.
Like, whatever, however you say. I always say boy or girl, like, backwards on that. But like, yeah, like, it just didn't matter. I loved work. I loved like the woodworking class that I took, and I also loved when I did home ec. You know what I mean? And like, this feels like we are like going backwards in time. Like, they don't even really teach those kind of things anymore in school.
I'm pretty sure that would be seen as some kind of like oppressive or problematic, like deeply, like home ec. Like, can you imagine? I had home ec, and I feel like I got the like tail end of it. I don't know that they were even so much like trying at that point, but technically I had that, and wood shop, which admittedly I used to skip and just go hang out in the bathroom because I was like, I don't want to do that.
See, and I loved it. Like, and I still have power tools and you know what I mean? I joke around like
I was like phobic of all that stuff, but see, you loved it. And yet here we are, we're both women. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like, for me, when I was 10, 11 years old, like I said, I was really big into like theater and dance and you know, ballet all the time, which is sort of this epitome of femininity and all of that. I was obsessed with all of that and makeup and Barbies and all of the things. I was also simultaneously completely like fixated on the Rocky movies. Okay, I used to watch the Rocky movies like pathologically, and I was obsessed with like the boxing and the masculinity, and like I think I even tried to like fake an Italian accent for what, like it was oh my god, like, it was not good. Okay, now it might be like, oh well, that's very, is she, oh, we don't know. No, motherfucker. I was going through puberty and I really liked the way that Sylvester Stallone and Carl Weathers looked with their shirts off. And I thought the boxing was all beautiful with the choreography. You know what I mean? But it's like, we can't just let kids just be kids.
Yeah, I would have been a target for, because I was always like not breaking the stereotype. I just never fit into the stereotype of like, you know, I did it all. I did all of it.
Right.
I liked to, you know what I mean, to do the stuff with my mom, but I also liked to, you know what I mean, to be rough and tumble in like, you know, mud pies and acorn fights. And, you know, like I remember as a kid, my mom wouldn't get me a slip inside. So I made one out of cardboard boxes. They're really slippery when they're wet, by the way. Like, you know, so I like, you know, I was a military brat. So there was always boxes, people moving, right? And so like I would get in trouble for inventing things and like I made a slip and slide out of cardboard box. It was fantastic. All the kids loved it. The parents hated it, but like, you know, I was always getting in trouble. Like, you know, like I was always into like recycling or building or like exploring or, you know, like I did, it didn't matter, you know what I mean? Like, so like I would wear I wore all boys clothes. I mean, I wore men's undershirts with flannel and like in the 90s and like skater pants and like Vans. Like I would be completely in all male clothing. It wasn't a thing. It didn't matter. I had male friends that wore skirts and I wore that. And then I would wear, you know what I mean? But I still like, I went to homecoming and high school and I wore a really pretty dress with freaking combat boots. Like we did whatever we did. And it wasn't like we weren't restricted by these binary gender roles. And it was a completely different. And I feel like now I just see like it feels like we're going backwards. Like it feels like, you know, if that little boy plays with a Barbie, then, you know, blah, 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 then it's something else. I had a little boy that I used to babysit, and he wore little sparkly, they had long hair, and he wore sparkly little like slide on shoes. They were little like ballet lace slippers. I didn't care. All I cared about was whether he had freaking shoes on his feet when I needed him to have shoes on his feet. Like, I don't care. You know, like we're not stuck in these roles.
And the fact that we're now supposed to believe that a child knows who they are at, I mean, it can be, like you said, ridiculously young, but even, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 is gonna be the most intellectually incontinent thing I have ever heard. Oh, well, they said they're a boy.
They're doing it to 2-year-olds at Duke.
What are talking about? Like, they do not understand the weight of what they are saying, which I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm being childish or something, but like, yeah, you're damn right I am, because there is no way that like, here's the thing. Maybe some kids do. I am sure that is the case. There are absolutely transsexual people who are like, yeah, I kind of,
I think you only can see that in hindsight. You can
Yeah.
only see a transsexual child in hindsight because you can only look back and see it once they've
Right.
gone through proper puberty.
And
Because
also,
puberty is natural. It's not
totally.
something that's like an optional thing.
We are literally teaching children that puberty is a biological act of war that they need to be scared of, they need to pause, they need to run from, what are you talking
Like,
about?
it's super uncomfortable at times, and it's weird, and girls' puberty is different than boys' puberty, and I don't know how theirs was, but, you know, it was weird suddenly, like, getting my period at 12. Like, thankfully, it happened at, like, gym class, so, like, I had to change clothes anyway, you know, but, like, you know, I was 12, and then, like, you know, you're growing boobs, and your body's completely changing. And it's doing it on its own because it's supposed to.
Well,
You're supposed to go through that.
and I'll tell you also, so like I started developing really young, and I am busty, and you know that gave me massive body dysmorphia, especially trying to be a dancer. But that aside, I remember when I started developing, and like earlier than all of my friends, this is probably like 5th, 6th grade, I was incredibly uncomfortable with my chest, with my boobs, and I said all the time, I was like, I don't want my boobs, I hate them, I want them gone, because it was getting me a lot of unwanted attention. And so my point is that if I was a child saying that today, because I'm saying it the way a kid say, like
You break
the
it.
adult is going to hear, oh, she doesn't want her boobs, let's give her top surgery, she's a boy. Never once in my head was I don't want to be a girl. It was I don't like the unwanted attention I'm getting. So what you do in that instance is you explain, like, puberty is awkward for everyone, this is an uncomfortable time, boys are going through their shit, you're going through it gets better, like, let's make
Yeah.
you comfortable, let's not take you for top surgery. I don't understand where we've devolved to this place where we've decided that children should never experience discomfort. I don't know in what universe that makes sense. I mean, you want to raise the softest generation ever, which we basically have, right?
I was talking to a father in my neighborhood about that. I'm like, you know, I feel like, you know, like I went through shit, but like I went through shit and it helped me become like a better adult. Like, you know what I mean? Like I tell people, like, I'm not here to, like, I am here to, like, you know, be a soft place for someone to land personally or whatever. But like, when I'm talking about these issues, this is an adult space. This is for adult conversation. And I'm not like here to, you know what I mean? To be all affirmative on everything. Like, I'm here to like really talk about things that are really happening. They might be uncomfortable. You might not agree with me. And I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? But like, this isn't that. This is like, it's like these kids have the thinnest skin ever. People have thin skin now and they can't handle anything. Whatever happened to, like, you know, like sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You know, and words from other people can hurt, but like at the same time, like the things that you go through in your adolescence and in your they make you a stronger person.
I feel like, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but maybe I can here. I don't know. But
Of course.
I do feel like there was something that happened after 9/11 where we got this obsession with like safety. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
like ratting on your neighbor.
Shift that happened. I think there was some kind of unspoken thing that happened to people's psyche after 9/11, because it was something that, like, while things like that are actually commonplace in many other countries, we always felt like, oh, here it just felt like your God is dead. Like, how could this have happened? Oh my God. You know what I mean? And there was something as a result that just made people inherently kind of fearful and more comfortable with like surveillance and more comfortable with ratting someone out and more comfortable with like, I don't want to hear something that upset. Like, there was something like a seed, and we've just seen it kind of grow since then. To me, I feel like there is a connection that you can go back and look at the aftermath of 9/11.
Yeah, it like rewired how we thought, and like we got a lot of, because it scared the entire nation, right? Like I had like 9/11, I was actually out on the West Coast. I flew from, you know, the East Coast. I flew out to Washington State, and I was out there with my dad, and I'm sitting there, and he like wakes me up after he saw the first plane hit, like he saw like that happen, and then he's like, "You need to get up," you know what I mean? Like something, you know. And I say the second plane hit, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, not only is my family there, I'm from, you know what I mean? I was living in Connecticut at the time. And like, I have to fly back home in a couple of days. Right. And I'm like, whoa, what is happening? It inherently like shook me, you know, it shook the nation. Yeah. And then, yeah, people were absolutely different after that. It was like, see something, say something, you know what I mean? Like something changed with us, like the programming changed with us with that. And I think it's because we're not in the United States, we're not used to having these like big tragic events that happen, right? It was very traumatizing for us as a nation. Whereas, you know, if you look at our military forces, what we're, you know, what our military is doing all the time to other countries, they're going through that all the time. They're going through a 9/11 all the time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we aren't used to it. We are very like sheltered and like very like, you know, from that level of violence that is inflicted in our names from our military. You know what I mean? Like we are very protected in you know, like we have like a different, you know, world, and what are we concerned with? We're concerned with like words being like, you know what I mean, seen as hurtful. And like, you know, I raised my daughter where I got calls from the principal, not because she was beating up on other kids or something like that. I got calls because she was standing up for other kids, because she was standing up when other kids were doing things that were against other children. So like when I say like you I have a child, I raised her that way. I raised her having empathy for others and standing up for what's right. And you have to have thick skin to be able to do that. If you don't have thick skin, if you can't take, you know what I mean, the brutality of standing up against your entire class or your entire grade in the lunchroom, like there was 2 different incidences that I got calls from when she was in school. One time was her entire class that she spent like every day with. It was like, and she was like in 3rd grade, a little boy's chair. No one wanted to sit in it because he was the weird kid. And the kid, I met the kid. I did a lot of volunteer work at my daughter's school. The kid was really odd. He was really an odd kid, and he probably grew up to be a freaking genius at something. Like, you know, he was, a lot of times it's the quirky, weird ones that are like brilliant. Like they're just beyond where we are. Right. And you know, so like she stood up and was just like, no, it's just a chair, and sat down in his chair because everyone like refused to like sit in that one because it was that boy's chair, you know. And there was another incident where someone was saying something inappropriate in front of her entire lunchroom. Like not just like, you know, her classroom that she spent every day with. It was an entire freaking lunchroom, and a boy was saying stuff that was inappropriate, and she called him out because she had thick enough skin to do that. To know that, like, no, I can take it if my whole class decides to give me shit for this and pig pile on me. She knew what was right and what was wrong. And she knew to stand up for that. So, like, us raising kids that can't take any kind of heat, that's not successful. Like,
you know what it is? It's not even raising kids that can't take some kind of heat. It's raising kids that are being told they shouldn't have to, and if they do, that's violence towards them. That's even worse,
yeah,
right? You're telling them like, no one should hurt your feelings. No one should ever invalidate you. No, you know what I mean?
And if you're seeking that out in this big wide world, then you're going to have a really hard time as an adult.
Yeah.
You are really not, you're not going to be set up for success. If that's what the case, if that's what's happening, you're not going to be set up for a successful life as an adult, because, you know, like, you're going to have a meltdown if something happens, you know what I mean? Or if somebody doesn't, like, you know, yeah, I mean, it's really it feels like a disservice
It's a
to not, like,
and
not that I want kids beat up or like tortured, or, you know what I mean? But, like, there needs to be a little bit of grit to them. They need to have a little bit of, like, you know, when you're growing up, like, that's how you kind of, like, figure things out. You know what I mean? Like, I was always the one who did the same thing that my daughter did, that stuck up for the people. You know, like, if I saw, there was tons of different people, like, you know, like, in high school or whatever, and, like, they were kind of like the, you know, the underdog or whatever, and I did the same thing. I kind of took them under my wing, like, no, come on, like, you know, you're special too, and, like, you know, and I still try to do that with people. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I think it's important to showcase people within our community. You know what I mean? Online and in person. Like, it's people need to be encouraged to be able to be themselves, to have that voice, to have that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we've just gotten to where, like, you're encouraged to have your echo chamber, and you shouldn't have people in your circle who don't affirm you, who disagree with you, who have a vastly different worldview than you do. And it's just very,
It reinforces that echo chamber, right? Because
so,
people have a recoil. Like, they're like, oh, you don't agree. I don't agree with what you're saying. Think about this. Next time there's someone saying something that you don't agree with 100%, pay attention to your body. How is your body reacting? Because it's not just your mind reacting. A lot of times people have, like, a recoil. They have, like, ooh, I don't like it feels gross, whatever. Pay attention to that. Just
yeah.
pay attention, because you might go, wow, I'm really having a physical reaction to somebody that is saying something that maybe I don't agree with. But, you know, it's perfectly okay. I don't agree with my partner 100% of the time. I don't know about you.
Would you want to? I mean, would you really want to?
No.
Like, I just find that so, it's just so boring. It's self-indulgent. And, you know, one of the, you know, again, the virtual world that is Twitter, which I feel like kind of has to be talked about like it's its own thing, because it is sort of this weird alternate universe where all of us spend way too much time, myself included. But, you know, there's one of my my kind of Twitter comrades. Yeah, I won't name him because I didn't ask permission, but there's one guy in particular that I've joked with him back and forth on message where I'm like, you know, it's so funny because the conservatives would never understand our friendship and progressives would never understand our friendship. And yet we have this beautiful relationship. And he actually, you know, he has some very overt prejudices that on paper should make, especially me, being Jewish, like running for the hills. And yet he is one of the first to stand up for me, to check on me, to have my back, to, because we went beyond that. And just through the communication and just through like not writing each other off, we have this like beautiful thing. He you know, he's one of my favorites because I'm just like, everyone will be triggered by this kind of relationship. And it's great. Do we agree on everything? Of course not. I don't care. You know what, in this world, for fuck's sake, like, take your camaraderie where you find it, you know? I can't, it's so broken that it's like when you find that and it's so beautiful, like take it, cherish it, like it's lovely, but no. And I everyone on Twitter everyone goes at everyone, and oh, you don't.
I have found some of the most beautiful relationships on there though.
Yeah,
I really, really have.
honestly, me too. And you being one of them. And it's like I am quite sure we don't agree on everything. I couldn't care less. I really couldn't care less.
Yeah. I'm like, we do agree on this. So like, and like we can take stuff one thing at a time. Like I don't ever expect that. Like I'm friends with people that like are completely like politically, or like I voted for Trump or I voted for DeSantis, and I'm like, it doesn't change how I feel about you.
I don't care.
I don't care. Like, I like you for what like, because of who you are. Like, I don't have like a filter with my friends. I mean, like, I have like the most probably like diverse like people, and others don't understand that. Like, I would have people like that are no longer like friends of mine on Twitter because like, they try to cancel me and stuff. So they would be like, oh, you're mutuals with so and so, and I'd be like, okay, like, I don't agree with everybody on everything, and like I have some like really hard lines, like, you know what I mean, like, but for the most part, like, I can I can talk to basically anybody. I was a military brat growing up. You know what I did every time we moved, every couple of years? My mom said even when I was 4, the first time we moved, and like we moved from like Washington State to New Orleans, like completely different fucking world, right? And I was 4, and I said, okay, well, I went and knocked on all the neighbors' doors. Do you have kids my age? Do you have kids my age? I went and found my fucking tribe.
So cute.
I went and found my tribe. And that's what I did every time we moved. Like, that's something that like, it really sucked as a kid growing up, having to move every couple of years. But it also made it like where I'm like, I can go and find my friends and find the people that are, like they're true. And some people are in my life for a short period of time. Some people are in my life for a long period of time. And whatever it is, they were there for a reason. There's a lesson for one of us or both of us to have learned. And you know what I mean? That's what it is. And I see it like that. Obviously I want to have lasting friendships and people that can like talk through discourse and figure things out if they don't agree with me. But like there's sometimes it just doesn't happen. And like, I'm okay with that because I have a complete understanding that, not everybody's where I'm at and I'm not where everybody else is, and that's okay.
No,
And
but it's really that the very concept of friendship, I think, has been so diminished and so eroded and so like reduced to these more political tribe or being able to be socially categorized appropriately, that that's not how friendships work. Not anything real, and even real, even on something like Twitter real. Like, if you're going to be that militant and stringent, where like, oh, you voted here, or you support this one, or you don't think this, therefore
if people are doing that to you, if they're judging you on that, there will eventually be something where it is their hard line that if you don't fall in line with what they agree with you on, they're going to do the same thing to you. If somebody's turning their back on somebody and saying, "Oh, well, you're mutuals with this person and you're this and that," just watch. That same thing will happen to, like, you know what I mean? If you think, "Oh, well, that person's my, they're my friend or and whatever," but and they're doing this. If you see that kind of behavior with somebody, just watch. It eventually will come for you. If they have that mentality where they have like, some kind of like, you have to like check all these boxes and you have to like, you know what I mean? Like, they're filtering people through like some kind of like, I don't know. They have like requirements.
I really think that the left and and even to an extent the dissonant left. I'll throw them under the bus too. And again, this is not going after individuals. I'm just saying the concept of, right, there's like a purity fetish. You know, there is this like ideological purity fetish. And I think that because we're disconnected from so many and so much, and I think because we don't have this, like, at least any longer, we don't have like beautiful like art and story and all these things being created for like to satisfy creativity and intellectual curiosity and all of these things, because that's sort of almost now shunned. It's almost like we get our entertainment through public shaming and denunciation, right? That's what happens. It's like it's a sport or something. And it's just very sad, you know, because as the world sort of fractures so much, you need people, you need community, you need people. They're not all going to agree with you. That's just ridiculous to think.
But it should be based in truth, though, and reality, and that's what matters.
100%.
When people are gaslighting and they're trying to tell you that, you know what I mean, 2 + 2 equals 5.
That's completely like, no, that, because that's not in the realm of objective reality. Like when I'm saying all this, it's within the context of like, but objective reality, you know?
And it's weird that we have to like say all of that, right? Like we have to like give prerequisites for like everything. Like, it's like, yeah, I feel this way, but blah, blah, blah. Like, I have to say, you know, I feel like, well, I don't have to, but I feel like I have to say, I've never said in my life before so much up until like more recently. Yeah, I'm part of the LGBT community. I have been for decades. I had people questioning whether or not that was even true. Like, what do you want from me? Like, really? Now suddenly you're going to question whether or not that's true? Like, do you want photos? Do you want like, you know, you want my ex-girlfriend's freaking number? Like, what are you talking about? How can you just like put some fake qualifiers up and try to like act as though, well, I don't even know if you're really part. Why would I fake virtue signal that? Like, what?
And you know, it's funny because I feel like what's happening more and more is that they are shutting down people even in the LGBT community who don't subscribe to their particular gender ontology. So and it's a weird thing, and maybe this gets us into some of the other stories, because I know we just been like, I can run my mouth, so I apologize to all of your viewers. But I think it's sort of interesting where, looking at this from the outside, because I'm not LGBT, which actually means that, you know, for someone like me, like, I'm grateful to you, because I think that even though a lot of what's happening affects women so much, because I'm not even in the community, they'll be like, girl, sit down. But it's an interesting thing to me where it seems like they need people to agree with them on an ideological level, and it almost seems like that is just as, if not more important than someone saying like, yes, I want you to have material rights. So in other words, I could say like, I want you to be able to marry who you want. I want you to be able to have a safe and effective transition if that is going to best serve you in the world. I want you to be able to pursue the profession you want. I want you to have equal pay. I want you to have all those material rights. However, do I think trans women are women? No. Do I think that sex is a spectrum? No. Do I think there are more than two genders? no, I'm still going to be labeled an enemy. All of that other stuff doesn't matter. Do you get that impression where it's like, it's so idealist and it's so much about like,
it's not based in reality or fact.
right. But it's like, but I want you to have all of those things, but no, I do not see you the way that you see yourself. But yet they want almost that to be the thing that's legislated into existence.
Yeah, they are legislating the change of that into existence with the way that they're changing the words.
The language issue on so many levels, and I know that's something else you wanted to talk about, right? Is concerning. Mainly because, first of all, and I've said this on Twitter, you know, language is not meant to be inclusive, it's meant to be precise. Words have meaning. And I feel like with this movement, you know, and we talked about this a little bit in Messenger, it's like they are very, very fixated on language and being included in the language as almost its own material right. You know, it's so they want, because obviously when Elon did that whole cis is a slur, blah, you know, blah blah blah, and I would say, you know, is it a slur on its face? No. Is it used that way? Yes. So there's the theory and there's the practice, right? More than not, 9 times out of 10, it's used as a slur. And beyond that, we did not ask for a qualifier, you know? So when then they talk about, well, how would we differentiate? And oh my God, and this is just like the 8th wonder of the world. I don't know how we would ever figure this out. And it's like, well, call on me. I have an answer. You have women, you have trans women. First of all, they fight against that, which on one level, I've always felt like kind of sort of suggests that they think there's some kind of shame in being trans, which there isn't. I don't
know. No, there's no shame in that at all.
But I think it's that, like, they want, if you're going to say trans women are women, then you have the category, in their mind, you have the category of women. Within that category are the cis women and trans women.
And here's why this all matters. So when like going back to, you know, breastfeeding and all of that, right? Now when we talk about things like breastfeeding and you know, like the government, the CDC coming out and changing, you know, and saying that, you know, like transgender, you know, like if you're a male to female and you're on the hormones that you can breastfeed. Well, here's another thing that, you know, women, infants, children, right? So this is the USDA, the Food and Nutrition Service. And if you look at the language here, it's women's infant children. Now, I know men that were not able to get, they were single dads and they had, you know, kids. They, you know, they don't get supplements and stuff like that. Like they don't get like extra dairy and milk and the coupons and all of that, like, because they're not, you know what I mean? Like they don't go through a pregnancy. So are they going to start doing this for the transgender? Like, are they going to change? Like, are they going to have to change all of these agencies' websites that, like, something that like WIC, which has been around for, I don't know when it was started. I used this when I was pregnant with my daughter and after, and it's literally for the safeguarding and the help of low income women, infants, and children up to the age of 5. So it's for pregnant women, breastfeeding women, non-breastfeeding postpartum women, infants and toddlers and children up to age 5.
See, would it be changed to like birthing person? Like, I don't know how.
So this is why the language matters too, because how things are funded, how you know what I mean? How are they going to word this? Are they going to start having, you know, like, are they going to have to change it to pregnant and transgender? Like, and what if it's just, and if they're just lactating for a non-baby reason? You know, because it's a side effect of the medication. Like, it's not a natural thing that a male lactates, right? So we've talked about that previously. So if they're just inducing, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
how do the qualifications of this work? If we can't define what a woman is in basic, you know what I mean? In most circles, I think most people know like what a woman is, but we understand that has been something that has been avoided as a topic. Actually answering, is an adult human female.
Right.
You're not assigned your birth. You're not, your doctor doesn't assign you. The doctor is not God. Your gender, your sex is determined in the womb. That happens like during the conception, and when your mother gets pregnant, and you know, like precisely when she gets pregnant, when she's ovulating, can determine whether you're more likely to have a male or a female baby. Like, you know, and as you go through puberty as a female growing up, when you go through puberty, that's when we all have the same mammary glands. This is the thing. We all have the same mammary glands. This is why men don't just like lactate out of the blue, right? They have the same mammary glands, but during puberty, women's develop because of the hormones that our bodies produce. And that's what makes that's part of our puberty, is like when our breasts grow and all of that. And one thing that's really happening is that our mammary glands are, you know, are being affected by the hormones, and that's what makes us be able to breastfeed our babies. And that's why when a pregnancy causes that to happen, you know, and so it all comes down to these very basic truths. They're very basic. This is very basic stuff. Anybody can look this up. But when you're changing the language, how does that affect all of this?
Well, yeah,
because it's been established that it's women, infants, children. Are there going to be transgender people that are going to like suddenly sue and say, you know, you have to change this entire program to include, and you can't exclude us? How is that going to work?
I mean, yeah, these are really good questions, and it is a concern, and it's a concern because the language is being changed. Again, these things have consequences. It's all well and good to be like, oh, well, we just want to be inclusive and we don't want anyone to feel bad. Okay, that sounds lovely, but those things have real world material implications.
We're not saying men are disposable either at all. Absolutely not.
In fact, hang on. I kind of want to touch on that for a second. I don't know, are they being sarcastic? I'm a little confused, but I will say that in terms of that kind of sentiment, which I don't know if she's saying that sarcastically or I don't know, but I have seen that kind of sentiment before said very, very seriously, where it's like, oh, you know, men just goodbye, we don't need them. Like,
yeah, no, I think that I appreciate both genders. You know what I mean? Like every person individually.
And
you know, I'm not against men. My
thing, and certainly on Twitter, I've gotten hate from like rad femmes about this, because I think, I'm trying to think how to word this. So while I am very much on the same page as you, where I think that we are seeing what this is doing to women, what this is doing to children, how this is basically co-opting like our sex-based rights and existence, and all of those things is 100% true. At the same time, I feel I do not want to see the pushback in that camp devolve into a war on men. Because
yeah, no, I don't want to see that either. And being pro women who are breastfeeding, you need extra calories, and you're supporting. It's actually because you're supporting a life. That's what, it's not just any woman can go and get this. It has to be during your pregnancy or your breastfeeding. This is
right.
just additional support for low income people during that time period. Because you are, like, I always say, like, I think it was my superpower that I was able to, grow my daughter in my body and then make the milk to feed her. Like, I think that that's amazing that our bodies can even do that. Like, I'm still astonished by that. I think it's an amazing thing. I was only ever able to have my daughter. So I'm super freaking grateful that I was able to have her. And I don't hate men just because I'm saying that women should have the extra nutrition and the baby should have extra nutrition. It's that same concept of, like, I'm not being hateful towards men because I'm saying that they shouldn't have it or that they shouldn't have food. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that, like, during this time period, this is a very, like, that first 5 years of life, that is extremely, like, that developmentally and everything, like, a child's body is going through so much, so they need that extra, the extra support and in that, and giving them a good start. But
So again, I'm a little confused by the comment. I think you clarified it well. And sometimes that's even, my pushback sometimes, if I get called like a turf or whatever, I'm like, oh, well, unfortunately you have to, like, consider yourself like a feminist for that. And I actually, like, although I will stand up for women, I don't actually consider myself, I don't put that label on myself. I just don't.
I don't put it on myself either.
So
I've been
like,
called it.
Right. I'm like, try again. I'm not a feminist, and in fact, like, I've, sometimes, like, I get called like a misogynist, on Twitter. If you post any, like, pro men stuff, which I do intentionally, and I stand by it, and it's genuine, like, that gets a lot of hate too. And then when you couple that with being very gender critical, it causes also a lot of confusion, and people like, this feels inconsistent. It's not inconsistent. Like, can say that, like, there is clearly a war on women, and at the same time, like, I fucking love men. Like, both things are true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has their strengths, and we just need to let the people, showcase their strengths. There are, and yeah, I get what you're saying. Yep. There's a systemic gender stereotype when it comes to social services / welfare, where men seem to have to fight harder for help because there's a societal expectation that we can just work 70 plus hours a week.
That is true.
And that I think that there is a heavier burden put on men. Like, if a man is a stay-at-home dad, does that make him less than you know what I mean, the partner, like, working? No, of course not. That's not where we're at. You know what I mean? Like, everybody should, like, everybody's strengths should be, should be showcased. Like, that's
right.
Whatever way that is, whatever works. If it works that way for a family, then it works that way for a family. Just like if it works for a mom to stay at home or both parents, so it all is variable. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, though, because I can imagine that is hard, that there is a gender stereotype when it comes to social services and stuff. I think we should definitely dive into that more, maybe. Maybe that would be a good thing for us to, to kind of, like, bring up and talk about, and, like, do a whole, like, episode on how, like, what is difficult for men in society, and, like, all this weight that is put on them. Because I think that would be a really good thing to kind of, like, explore. I think all of us get it from different ways. But the reason I stick up for women so much is because we haven't even had our rights for that long. We still don't make the same pay as men. We're seen as the weaker sex. Like, and maybe it's because, like, 95% of men can kill us with their bare hands. Like that's a factual thing, you know? And so men are typically stronger than women. I'm not like I'm typically like absolutely super strong. I have like superhuman strength. It's weird. But that's not like the common across the board. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, it is something to think about. But like, yeah, I'm just saying, like, though, are they going to have to change all the language for all of these programs to make them all more like inclusive and stuff? I'm just kind of like, I just have questions. I'm just pointing this out now because I'm like, okay, if the CDC is coming out and saying that men can breastfeed with a side effect of a medication, then are they going to change it for this too? Like, how are we going to restructure this that this would make sense?
You know, the other thing too, and I'm not necessarily referencing this WIC thing specifically at all, but just in a more general sense, like, not everything is supposed to be inclusive. Like, there's that, like, we sort of have had it drilled into us that like inclusivity automatically good all the way across the board, always more inclusivity, more the better. But no, not everything is supposed to be inclusive. In what universe is everything supposed to be inclusive?
No, we need to have women only spaces. Like, we haven't even had the rights, I think, for our own bathrooms for like, I think it's been like 60 years.
And I would even say men's only spaces. What, like, yeah,
they deserve that too. They deserve that too. They deserve to have like their man cave or their men's only spaces, men's spas, whatever it is. Like,
you know what made me laugh so hard was like, did you see the footage from this weekend's London trans pride? And it was like just trans pride. And I was like, this is ironic because this movement that demands to be injected and accepted into every facet of society. This is a movement that was protesting last week for an LGBT, like, I don't know, dating social night or something. They had like a protest because, oh, trans weren't allowed or whatever. Hosted London Trans Pride, just trans, no one else. Can you imagine the outrage, the act of like, oh my God, anti-trans genocide, right?
oh, sorry.
If it had been LGBT only pride.
Sorry, a video is like playing in the background. Okay, I think I got it to stop. Sorry. Ah!
I didn't hear anything, so you're good with me. I don't know.
Okay, good. All right.
It was just a very interesting, somewhat ironic thing where it's like, and some of the speeches, like I shared that one with you where they were literally like, punch TERFs in the face if you see them. Yeah, well,
and I've been labeled as a TERF and I'm not a TERF. So like, you know, so that like, really, like, just anybody.
It's like, right. And so that it's kind of like Nazi. It's just come to mean like anyone who disagrees with you, which is why I was never on board with the whole like punch Nazis. I'm like, yeah, this is not going to go to a good place. No,
yeah,
because I mean, like, who decides who is, who isn't, who decides who's good, who's bad,
yeah, I've been called all sorts of things and all kinds of labels.
Every name in the book, you know, and sometimes, not always, but a lot of times, do you notice this, that like the people who come the hardest for you on Twitter are the ones where you do actually have a lot of overlap, but then when you deviate, they want to like scold you and corral you back in line, and they're the ones that get totally unhinged.
Yeah. It goes, they have that recoil effect of like, you are speaking outside of the allowed echo chamber.
You hold the line
And
on this
and
thing.
you get some of the, like the most like intense people, and it's like, oh no, 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 no. I don't take orders. Like I'm not a fall in line person, okay? I was raised in a military household where I was the stepchild who was reminded every fucking day that I was the redheaded stepchild, and I got my ass beat because I didn't fall in line. You think that now I'm going to do it? You think that I'm just gonna like, roll over and, like now? Because adults are like, I'm sorry, I was a kid and I wouldn't do it. I'm definitely not going to just do it like as an adult.
Where I'm like, oh, thank you, woke savior on Twitter. I see the error of my ways. You don't like my post? Okay, now I'm going to do 10 more. Just like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's
yeah. You want to get me going on something? Tell me I can't. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm like, you could also just like keep scrolling. Like, that's also an option.
I know. I tell people that all the time. Like, you can just like scroll by. You don't have to stop and react. It's okay. It's perfectly fine.
We all stop and react. I do it. I mean, Twitter is like political drive-bys. Like, that's what it is.
That's so true.
How I see Twitter. But there's a difference. But so here's the thing, like, if I go at someone, it is either like a public kind of person, like a politician or a journalist or whatever, or it is someone who, yes, is just like an like ordinary person, but it's someone that's like, just saying something so ridiculous, so vile. They are not in any way one of my like people. I never like will chastise like my kind of circle. And I see plenty that I'm like, just keep scrolling. You know what I mean? I never understand it when it's kind of good faith discussion is a different thing. That is not at all what I'm talking about. And you can have your healthy, intense disagreements, but it's the scolding thing where it's like, oh, you're one of my people, but like, just stop. That I don't do. That I don't understand.
Yeah, it's like just because I'm friends or mutual that doesn't mean that we're gonna like be that I'm gonna agree with everybody 100%. Like I would have nobody.
No.
If that was my like prerequisite was like, oh yeah, you have to agree with me on everything. Like there would be nobody because I can find things I agree with people on much easier than I think some people try to find things that they disagree on. You know what I mean? Like it depends on what you focus on. So I wanted to bring an example of what we were talking about when we're talking about the males that are breastfeeding and what's going on.
Yes, please.
I have a TikTok video of somebody that has, has come out to say, I don't know if you saw this, I have a couple of their videos. And I'll just
play it.
We're just gonna go. We're just gonna pull the trigger.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I want to share something with you guys that I've never told you guys before. I've always wanted to be able to lactate. And today, my doctor, after my EKG results, said that she's feeling confident enough to start me on this medication, Reglan. And it has some serious side effects, but I'm only going to be taking it for 2 weeks, up to 3 weeks possible. So within 2 weeks, I should be lactating. The rest is on me. I'm going to have to pump and keep a supply. This is the tough part. I have one pump. I need 2 pumps. And the amount of lactation, the amount of pumping that I have to do to lactate is going to require a better pump than what I got. I mean, I have electric pump, but I need the 2 of them, and I need them where they're more compact. And I'm going to start a GoFundMe. I need some help. Or if anybody's got one, they want to donate, please put it in the comment. I need a good one. One that links up to the phone where it's more discreet, because I'm going to have to pump a lot. And that means I'm going to be running around out on the streets pumping too. This is something I want to do. I would love to help a family, that can't breastfeed and does want the milk and has the option to have transgender milk. Let's hope that I produce enough. That depends on, I guess, on how much I eat and all of this other stuff. I've done quite a bit of my own homework. I will be getting with a lactation coach and going from there. And I will be documenting all this stuff. So as soon as I get my GoFundMe set up, I will be posting it in my little section. And you can hit on the link and then just, help me out. But yeah, if someone could just get me the pump, that'd be even better. Or else I'm going to have to try to save and do what I can with one pump, but I will do whatever it takes. But I will document all of this. We've done the homework. There's nothing. There's no doctors, nothing that has any experience with a transgender wanting to lactate. I am a pioneer at this. And I'm going to document it and share my experience with you guys. So, follow me. All my videos from now on are going to be about me and my lactation. Okay? I just wanted to share that with you guys. Oh my God, I'm jumping down, up and down inside. I love you guys. Stay tuned.
Okay. So here's.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
First of all, when he said, I need help, yeah, that was the truest thing that he said in that whole video, where he was like, I need help. Yes, you do. You need serious help. I don't know, like maybe instead of like saving up for like the pumps, he could like save up for a dentist. I don't know. Like I'm so snarkiness out of the way. Here's the thing. To me, and I want to know what you think, that has nothing to do with being trans. That's literally not the same thing. You're going to put whatever that is in the same category as like people like a buck angel or like who are just assimilating and walking the world and not doing whatever this is to me a fetish. That to me is in the autogynephilia kind of range. It's like he wants this function that serves his affirmation. And I think where I'm also a little confused about where things got so off the rails is that now, and he's an extreme case, but sort of just in the discourse in general, and I don't know if you can give some insight into this, but like, when did acknowledging biology become transphobic? Do you know
I don't know. I don't know, because like we were saying earlier that we had friends that are transsexual and that had a process and went through it. Like my daughter met my friend and like explained it in the best the best that we could in very, very simple terms. And like my friend was male and felt female, and they had gender dysphoria, and they had gone through years of therapy and doctor's appointments and things like that. And like Skylar just like accepted them. Like you just are who you are. Like I mean, children aren't like typically like typically like hate is taught. Hate is a taught thing, right? Yeah. Like, so unless you are taught that, and even if you are taught that, doesn't mean that you necessarily will be hateful just because you were taught it. But you know, like I've always raised her to just be open-minded and just accepting and loving. And so what happened is I think that people were just accepting and loving, and there were just people that were transsexual and they were living among us, and like a large amount of acceptance happened. And then in 2016, when we got like, you know what I mean, the gay rights, you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, you can marry who you have the same right. Like, okay. And there was a flip of the switch where it went from that to suddenly, what were all these orgs going to do?
Yeah.
What were they going to do? They immediately switched over to the transgender.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. Like it was like clockwork. It's like, okay, we know that we're gonna check this box, and when we do this, we have to figure out where that funding, like where are we going to get our funding source? Like if they have the rights, then what happens? That's why I feel like sometimes like advocates will for certain causes will stay stuck in something and like self-destruct things on their own, because then if that happens, if we get that, then what? Then what are they going to do? What is their interest then?
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think that's a huge part of it.
And because we were inclusive, you know what I mean? We were inclusive and accepting, and we were on a roll of it. And then it just kind of all kind of like kept, you know, snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And it grew.
If there was ever something to gatekeep, it's this, because it affects every aspect of society. When it was gate kept, like back in the day, we both talked about personal experiences, there was no problem. We didn't have this whole thing around bathrooms and locker rooms. It was, now self-ID has completely been like this agent of ideological chaos for society.
Yeah.
That is unhinged. That is just the most,
I mean, it's self-diagnosis is really what it is. Like, what other medical condition can you walk in and tell the doctor, I have this, now give me the blah, blah, blah. Please.
But I've gotten in arguments. Have you had this experience with people being like, it's not a mental disorder?
Yeah, and it's really messed up because when I talked to Buck Angel about it, he's like, no, it's a mental health disorder. I talked to other you know, transsexuals. They're like, no, it's a mental health disorder. Body dysmorphia is a mental health disorder. And to like stop denying, like people need to stop like saying that it's not, because it is. Like they get really upset, and it affects people that actually have body dysmorphia. It's like, and that you can have body dysmorphia from many things. You have to understand that, like somebody who's bulimic or anorexic, or you know what I mean, like there's people that actually want to go and have like a working limb or a finger cut off. Like it is a disorder. Like it is not.
No, I was arguing with somebody, and they were like, it is just hateful and bigoted and terrible to say that like that trans people have a mental disorder. I'm like, only if you think there's something shameful about having a mental disorder. That's
like I deal with mental disorders. I have my service dog is for PTSD, which is for my mental health. So like I'm not shaming anybody for having a mental health disorder. I have mental health disorders, and I acknowledge that, and I'm truthful about it.
You know, this person was like, well, they used to say that about being gay too. Yeah, here's the thing. The fact that these two things get lumped together is such a disservice. Gay, gender dysphoria, trans have nothing to do with each other. They are one is a sexual orientation, and one has to do with a disconnect between your mind and your body. These are not the same thing at all.
And the reason why the LGB became the LGBT, or I say LGB anti, was because a lot of people were transsexual were also part, like it was like kind of like a support system. It was like, hey, you're like marginalized and like, you know, and so are we, and we're kind of like cousins. So like let's team up. And that's what it started out as. And then it just like everything else started going and getting added on and on and on and on and on. And that's when it became like, and because like people were just kind of going about their lives and not like really paying as much attention. There's some people that were paying attention that have been sounding the alarm about this for years.
Yeah.
For years. We're gonna get to one of them in a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, and here Baba Yaga's pointing out that Washington State Governor Jay Inslee signed a law that goes into effect July 23rd, which will allow shelters and child care services to treat a child for gender dysphoria without notifying the parents. Yeah, we talked about earlier about California, how there was that case and they took that child away from the mom and then the child ended up committing suicide after they medically transitioned the child. So like this is not okay. And if people aren't talking about this and they aren't standing up for the children right now, this is going to get worse and they will come for more kids. This is, you know, so I have a follow-up video from the same individual that we just watched from.
Oh.
And I have one more after this because I wanted to touch on what's happening to people that are married and people that are suddenly, you know, they're becoming widows.
Okay.
They talk about that in the third video. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. This is one of their updates, and you can see that if you want to follow them on TikTok or go check out more of their videos, I'll put all the links for all the things below. But it's Abby Pickles 1. That is what they go by on TikTok. Please don't harass anybody. Like that's not the point of that. I think that there's chemicals in that milk. It's chemical induced. That and any person who is on hormones and pumping like that it is likely to be going through that milk. And there are studies, and I've done previous episodes where I've gone more into males breastfeeding, and you should check that out. All right.
Hi, I'm Abby, and I'm transgender, and still looking gorgeous. I am pumping. I was asked by somebody, how much am I producing? And this video is to show how much I'm producing. So I will show you here in a minute. Stay tuned. Okay, so it's been 40 minutes since I've been pumping. Yeah. This is what I'm able to get up to now. Not much. I'll put it in the corner. It's not bad for only a week of doing it. Here's the other one. This one's got a little bit more. So I don't know what the one means, but yeah, that's how much I got now. So yeah, I'm lactating. And I've been having to do booby care and stuff like that. So that answers your question, how much I'm pumping. But I got to work it out and keep pumping 6 times a day. I'm going to probably take vinegary. I got to eat a lot of proteins and stuff and drink a ton of water and get some rest. It's a process of lactation. But so I hope that answers your guys' questions. And ask more questions. I love them and appreciate all the likes. Thank you. Love you guys. Bye. Hi, I'm Abby.
Now you notice like the first thing that they say is that they say their name and they identify that they are a transgender person. And that's the first thing. That is their identity. Like I introduce myself and I'm like, hi, you know, I don't go like, hi, I'm an LGB person. You know what I mean? Like, I don't identify, I don't go, hi, I'm a disabled, you know what I mean? Neurodivergent. Like, I don't do that. Like,
Right.
it,
No, I
it
don't,
becomes their identity is fully encompassed into that.
totally. Like, I don't typically just, you know, say like, hi, I'm a dyslexic Jew, like right off the bat. Like, I typically just don't, you know.
Yeah, I'm dyslexic too, and it sucks. And
I always feel so bad for like those that do follow me on Twitter. I'm like, welcome to like misspellings and missing letters and missed words, and like I hope you enjoy, like, because I'll always notice it after it's like gotten some engagement, and I'm like, oh, motherfucker, I can't fix it, you know. But yeah, that's but yeah, that, you know, but you bring up a good point. The identity is basically what is enshrined, right? And it is self-declarative. And it's funny, and I know I don't want to, no, I don't want to take us off topic. So finish this topic because I can just go. But I was going to relate this to something that we were talking about yesterday.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mean to. I don't know if you heard that. The video started playing. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just going to say, you know how like there was that conversation yesterday where it was like, oh, I'm a lesbian, but like I suck dick, basically, or whatever. And it was like,
yeah, she's
well,
like,
no, maybe you're bi, and like that's totally cool. And it's like, no, I'm a lesbian because I'm a lesbian. So I think what it is
they change, because if you change the language and say trans women are women, then that inherently makes that person a woman, and you are a lesbian if you are a woman that likes other women and you see it in that way. The language is changed.
That is 100%. And I think in addition to that, one's identity, we've decided, sort of supersedes action. The identity is the gospel, right? So if you can say, I'm a lesbian that sucks dick, I'm a lesbian that does X, and it's like, well, no, but no, because I'm a lesbian. That's how I identify. So therefore, my identity is ironclad. My actions are sort of rootless and fluid. Do you know what I mean? So like you can do whatever and retain the identity. So it's a lesbian doing X things. The actions seem to not hold nearly as much weight as the self-declarative identity that because we've just elevated that concept to like a sort of a religious kind of place.
Yeah, like taking hormones and having having surgeries to alter your appearance so that you can walk in a body that you feel more comfortable with does not actually change your chromosomes and down to every little aspect of who you are. It doesn't. It just doesn't.
We were all good with that till like 5 minutes ago. And it's interesting too, because these are the same people typically. Again, I know there's not a unified front, but generally speaking, this is the same crowd that's like, sex and gender are different. Okay, well, if sex and gender are different, then your transgender, it's even now in the contemporary name, right, over transsexual. If you're going to say transgender, you're changing your gender. Gender and sex are different, but then they get triggered when you talk about that biologically they are still like their birth.
Yeah, if your gender and your sex are different, then why are you changing anything?
Right, because then it's like by their it goes against their logic. It's like, no, then you're actually saying that you don't think gender and sex are a different thing because you're being triggered by someone pointing out, okay, but you're still a biological man. you are transgender, you're walking the world as a woman, you want to be perceived as a woman in society, you want to adopt that social role.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but like it's the
wrong with that.
It's the truth that gets us every time. It's the truth of, okay, you know, you want to present and walk in the world as, you know what I mean, you want to outwardly feel like this. And that's okay. We accept that. We're not against that. But when you start to change the words and you change the, you know what I mean, the meaning of words and what it means, that is taking away from somebody else.
And you start to reframe long-standing science and biology. It's not like there's been an explosion of new research that's like, oh, everything we knew is wrong. No, you've just taken what we already had, and you're reframing it to suit an ideology that is deeply idealist. Like I said, okay, they don't understand their own yes, I think that is absolutely there's absolutely true.
It kind of like folds back in on itself, the whole identity and everything, and then it can get really confusing. And then even asking questions, or like, oh, you're hateful, you're a bigot, and it's like, no, I'm trying to understand, because from where I'm standing, that's not what that is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that you can change. We don't have the science. We're not doing brain transplants and transplanting your brain into a different body. That's just not happening. We don't have the science to do these things yet. We don't have the science to transplant completely, put you into a female body. Like, having cosmetic surgery does not change your sex. It doesn't. It doesn't. An inverted penis is still an inverted penis. Like, and that's just true. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that's not said to be mean or hurtful. It literally is. That's what, if you talk to a doctor that does those surgeries, that is what they do. I've seen the surgeries. Like, it's not, you know, like it doesn't change that, you know, like you're not getting organs from, you know what I mean, a female body and changing them out for a male body. It's not like a liver transplant. That's not what's happening. But they're acting as though it is. And it's like, okay, well, we're talking about the truth here. That's all we're trying to get at. Like,
and it's disturbing when you have, you know, medical and scientific institutions that are backing this, and it's like, you're so, you know, whether it's a financial incentive, your ESG score, your whatever, there is a lot of finance and power, social and political, tied up in all of this. So yeah, I think it's there's just ideological capture on the institutional level, which makes fighting against this that much harder, but that much more necessary.
So this is another video that Abby did.
Okay.
And it kind of broke my heart, because it goes into the transgender widows and what's happening, because, you know, we can, you know, like, from a human perspective, it was just really sad. And it just, you know, I feel for the woman and her wife. I didn't do that on purpose. I'm trying to be respectful, because they're, you know what I mean? They haven't said anything that was like off the wall. Like, they weren't disrespectful to me. So I'm trying to be respectful of them and use the pronouns they prefer. All right. So I'm going to play this. This explains a little bit about what's happening and how women that are married to men are being, like, widowed. Basically, that's what they call it.
Okay.
So somebody asked me earlier, how did my wife feel about this? Well, that's my wife right there. We haven't been together since 2012. We have 3 beautiful children together. One is 18.
One is 16, and the other one is 12, if I'm correct. 12 or 13. 13, I think. 2 girls, 1 boy. No matter how hard I tried, I even taught myself how to read. I had a 5th grade education, taught myself how to read, and put myself in college and got a 4.0. I was really determined. I traveled back and forth across the United States for my wife and did everything that I could. But it didn't work, and not long ago, yeah, she said that, she wanted her husband back, but her husband's not coming back. I'm happy with who I am. And this is who I always wanted to be. She's known that I wanted to do this from the time she got with me. I always talked about this. She just didn't think I was ever really going to do it. And she always said I couldn't see you as a woman. Well, honey, here I am. Hi. But, I just wanted to get this out there, and that, she was excited, she's like, I got a wife now. But eventually the divorce will come. All things will come to an end because I have a girl in my life now that loves me to death. And eventually she's going to propose to me, and then I'm going to go forward with my divorce. I'm sorry, honey. But, she will move on. She will find somebody that will be really good for her, because I'm proud of her. She's doing really well. She's got her own apartment. She's a manager and stuff, doing laundry and stuff, housekeeping, Housekeeping, let me fuck your pillows. But, she's doing good. We didn't do good together, but we're better as friends. And, I just want to get this out there. I just want people to be educated about how things are. And wasn't I a good looking man? I think so, but I look better as a woman. So this was a little bit more about me. If you guys do have any more questions or, want to know something else about me, please ask. I have no problem sharing. Thank you for all you guys' love and support and following me. Please follow me. I got a lot more to offer. Thank you. Bye.
So it's just kind of sad to me, you know what I mean, to know that, this affects, it affects the whole family, and I don't know their personal story, but I just thought that, it's a very human aspect of it, is that this is affecting others, and that they're whatever, for whatever reason they weren't able to continue and work it out. But this is happening with a lot of people, like, as more and more people come out as transgender, they're losing partners because of this.
It's so, yeah, and I know they call it like trans widow, and I think it's fitting because that's like a death. That's like a death.
Yeah, it's a whole process that a whole family is going to have to go through, and and so it's just, we already have really high divorce rates, and it's not to I don't have anything like, mean to say about it. Like,
No, I
have
thought it's just
empathy
sad.
and compassion
That's
about,
sad.
yeah. And that is what is happening to, to families. And so it can be really heartbreaking. Now, I said earlier that I have, oh yes, here it is. I have a clip of Dr. Miriam Grossman. She was on Steve Bannon's show, which I was like, wow. But she was also in the documentary, What is a Woman? And so that's how I kind of like know her from. And she does have a book coming out called Trans Nation that I do want to get also. Let me see. I'm going to add her in. But this is like an encounter to that video where Abby said, that doctors aren't coming out about this, and like this, I'm a pioneer. This isn't a new thing. Like, there's been studies, very few, but they usually if a male goes in and says I'm lactating, then that's a side effect of a medication or something that's wrong. But here is a doctor that is saying, this is her reaction from being on the show, and I'll have the link to the whole episode. It's like about 17 minutes long. We're not going to react to that whole thing, but I will put the link down in the show description if you want to check it out, and I put links for all of these other clips as well. But I thought this was important because she reacts about the breast milk and the CDC.
Here, the CDC, a formerly reputable, trusted institution in this country, is now telling health providers that they need to assist their patients who are men living as women and who want to, I'm not making this up, they want to feed their infants from their chemically induced breast tissue. So the CDC is saying, all you providers out there, you have to know how to facilitate this to happen. And what this means, ladies and gentlemen, what this means is that these.
Hold on, hang on, hang on, just so I can understand. This is stupid.
Imagine shocking Steve Bannon.
You're saying
Right?
Breastfeeding children? Is that what you're talking about? A man would breastfeed a child? Is that what this means?
That is what we're talking about, except that it is not at all breastfeeding. What it is men who are being given medications that have as an adverse effect of the medication, an adverse effect, it creates, it causes their breast tissue to create a substance that is then excreted. So this is not breast milk in any fashion. And as a woman and a mother and grandmother and as a physician, I am livid that our CDC, a government institution that's there for us to trust and to turn to as authorities in medicine, are now taking this just unbelievable, egregious position and saying that men living as women can be given these drugs for off-label use. Okay, so some of these drugs, for example, they might treat schizophrenia or other medical illnesses. And as I mentioned, they have this adverse effect. It's called galactorrhea. It means that a man's breast tissue begins to secrete a substance. That substance is not breast milk. Furthermore, that substance that is given to these infants has chemicals in it. So those drugs that are given to those men who think that they can breastfeed, those chemicals are going to be absorbed by the infant.
I suggest, if you can, you might not be a Steve Bannon fan. I'm not a Steve Bannon fan, but I thought that this was so important because there was only him in there for a second. But I suggest watching the whole clip of this. It's just, it's astonishing to me that this is we're even at this place and that doctors are like going along with this.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I didn't necessarily think that it could devolve more from the debate from a handful of months ago around like trans women can have periods, but surprise, we've managed to sink even lower than that. That is I'm really at a loss for words. And you know what she says? She lays it out. This is a side effect of certain medications that we are now selling as a biological affirmation to trans women, but I really I hesitate to even say trans women. To me it seems more like geared towards autogynephilia and fetish specific stuff, because I'm sorry, I really cannot imagine that well-adjusted, lovely trans women are doing this shit. I just can't, you know?
And what are we talking about when we're talking about autogynephilia or AGP? They often call it. This is what we're talking about right here. This is the actual, definition. It's basically you want to be a woman. Like you feel such a strong need to be a woman that you want to be a woman. Like you love women so much that you want to be one. And there's 4 different types of it. There's transvestic, which is a fantasy of wearing women's clothing. Behavioral, which is the fantasy of engaging in typical feminine behavior, like knitting with women. Like, oh my gosh. Psychologic or physiologic. Is that physiologic? My dyslexia is like messing with me.
Physiologic, I think. But you're asking another dyslexic, so.
Fantasy of pregnancy, breastfeeding, and menstruating. So this is just another aspect of the same thing, like you were just saying, like, the women, the men saying that they think they're menstruating. This is what this is. And what is that? Anatomic, the fantasy of having a woman's body, including partial autogynephilia, which the focus is on the mix of male and female body parts. So these are the 4 different aspects of it,
And the thing is too, you realize, because this now is under the umbrella of trans, I know they're not using the label, but that behavior, these things, these characteristics are now under the trans umbrella.
Their aphilia, though.
Yeah. Can we appreciate what actual harm this causes to legit transsexual people? That's what we're not talking about. Why? I find it so interesting that, we've got long time transsexuals whose voices are silenced because they don't hold the correct opinions. So we silence them. They can't speak for trans people. But a gender fluid, demi boy who just got here 5 minutes ago and watched a bunch of TikTok videos, that will be who can speak for.
Not somebody who transitioned 30 years ago. Right. Not somebody who's been through it, who went through the therapy, that has a diagnosis, that knows what it is.
I see horrible things said about the person I was arguing with recently literally told me, and I just kind of stared at the tweet because I was like, I don't even know how to respond to this, told me that Buck Angel, in their estimation, is the Candace Owens of trans people. I was like, this is so offensive on so many levels. And you don't even see it. You literally do not even know why I can't, he shouldn't speak for them. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, he's just been trans for 30 years. It's fine. Don't
Buck
worry.
Angel has been working on legislation around the entire world in several different countries to give trans people their rights.
But he doesn't think trans women are women. And there you go. It all comes back to, you have to subscribe to the idealist nature of it. It's very culty. I mean, I think we need to call it what it is. The cult of gender ideology has completely taken over any sort of reputable kind of movement or effort for whatever equality was left to be fought for, which it doesn't seem like there was actually very much, because when you ask them, when they go on about like trans rights or human rights and all, and you say, what right don't you have, like concrete, they either shut you down or they'll get into something vague, and if you push, it always goes to the kids. It goes to the kids, it goes to women's spaces, it goes to the sports. So in other words, they want the kids are like just a demonic thing, like don't go after the kids, but the others, it's like, so you want the right to infringe on other people's rights. That's what you ultimately want.
That haven't had the rights for very long. Women haven't had the right to wear pants all this time. Like you know what I mean? It's fairly new in history that women have had the right to vote, that women have been able to wear pants, that women even had their own bathrooms. I'm talking 60 years, guys. That's it. Like, we still don't make the same as men. So like, because of stereotypes, because of like pushing us back into these hard gender stereotype roles, it's causing men to want to not to escape the burden of what's going on and all the pressures that are put on them, right? So they're like leaving that. And then the women are like, oh my gosh, a lot of them that I've heard of that like have been assaulted by men. And so like, they're like, and we have to understand again, the aphilia, what other philias are there, right? There's pedophilia, there's, these are all these are sexual things. Aphilias are they're inherently sexual in nature. So we have to understand that like when we're saying this, we're not saying it to be like, we're against trans people and that they shouldn't feel that way. But no, what we're saying is that there are some people that have autogrophilia and that they are going into women's spaces and they are getting caught doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and women don't feel safe.
But then the problem is, you want to like just bang your head against the wall, because if you say that, you can get hit with like, well, they aren't men in women's spaces because trans women are women. Do you see what I mean? You keep
and that's why the language matters.
Idea that is really living in someone's head. It's like, yeah, but they're not. Well, no, they are, because they said they are. If you're a woman, if you say you're a woman, you're a woman. Therefore, there is no man in your space. There's a woman. And it's like, this is so divorced from reality. You want me to reject my eyes, my ears, every sense I have, and say, and that is a lot of what gender ideology hinges on, is you being willing to sever your connection to objective reality.
Yeah, like right here. Portland City government tells staff to avoid mentioning pregnant women and citizens in woke language directive. Now, this is where it starts to get dangerous. This is from the 8th of July. So, they're talking about how the as Portland struggles to manage crime and increase homelessness, city staff members are being told to adopt more culturally conscious vocabulary that includes not using words such as women, Caucasian, or citizen.
God.
So what does that do? Why is it only women that are being erased? How is that bringing equality and human rights to anybody? If it's like, oh yeah, don't use the word woman. You like, it's not an attack on, like, I'm sorry, but men are not being framed in the same way. That the attack isn't the same as it is on
You know what?
women when it comes to the language part
That
of it.
is 100% true. You know what I think?
They're being attacked in a different way.
Men are being attacked in a different way. There is a war on masculinity, and I don't care who I trigger by saying that. There absolutely is a war on like traditional kind of masculinity, the protective, benevolent, you know, you
And
frame
there's
it as-
women and men that desire that. I know,
Yes,
like
yes.
there are gay guys that desire to have that very masculine man. There's women that desire a masculine man.
Absolutely. And it's not about like muscles and bulk and strength. It really has to do with more of like having an honor, having an integrity, having the courage to push back against shit like we're talking about, because typically men protect the weak and the vulnerable. Now I'm not saying like, oh, women are like weak and vulnerable, but we are like the kind of
We are at, well, a lot of times we are at a more disadvantage. Like that is biology.
I think they are simultaneously telling women, you shouldn't desire this protection. The protection that you crave is oppressive to you. So you're gaslighting that. And then you're telling men, we're going to shame you out of even having that kind of desire. So then you get almost this like gender sort of anarchy. It's sort of like, I mean, and like I said, this goes into the different forces at play, because there's also kind of this gender, like abolish gender kind of movement that is sort of just like everything is a spectrum, everything is a construct. It's just like a free for all, and that yes does clash. Oh, Gray Walker, you're welcome, and maybe I misunderstood your comment from earlier. I you're clearly lovely, but um but you know, you've the destruction of the binary is going to be very off-putting to transsexual people who want to walk the world and they transitioned to fit into the binary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what transsexual is about. It is to transition, to be able to walk the world. And I'm going to actually be having there is some people that I'm trying to get on to come on as guests that are transsexual, and people from like different walks of life, people that call themselves TERFs, because I want to get the perspective from everybody.
All of it.
I want everybody's perspective and everybody's input.
And it's like, and you're gonna sit there and tell me like Buck isn't masculine, not just in his appearance, but like in his manner, in his integrity, in his fight. Like he's embodying the social role of a man on every conceivable level. That's what transition is. This whole like, I have a beard and I'm going to put on a dress because that's my gender expression and I still want to be like a she, her, like, fuck you. No, you don't get to do, sorry, you don't get to.
And you don't have to have surgery to like be a transsexual either. You know what I mean? Like that you don't have, like, it's not a requirement. Buck never had like a lower surgery done. But like my best friend is transsexual and like didn't have surgeries, but you wouldn't be able to tell. You know what I mean? Like, because they just wanted to blend in with their family and they just live a life. That's it.
On some level, there is some effort that's required. And I know like we've heard Buck talk about like he'll mock the whole like, oh, passing privilege, whatever. He's like, yeah, you have to work at it. Yeah, you're right. You're damn right. You have to work at it. So don't give me passing privilege. It's like, it's not a privilege. It takes effort and work to look like this. And I wanted to look like this. You have to accept that people are instinctual. They are going to call you what you look like. That is not to be hateful.
And it's something that happens very quickly. Like when you meet somebody, your brain automatically does it. It's a primal instinct. Do you know why it's a primal instinct? That women can especially like identify, or like will like go, oh, you know what I mean? Like sometimes our brains and our eyes will like mismatch, and it will make us like, you know, like question marks come out. You know what I mean? Like I just picture like, ooh, little question marks going, oh wait. It's because it's
comment on the bottom, by the way. Whoever this is,
Baba, yeah.
Love them.
Baba. Yeah. But it's like it's the same thing that's happening. It's because it's naturally that men they are the apex, right? Like they always were. So like women, like 95% of men can kill women. Men can kill 95% of women with their bare hands. It is a natural primal reflex for women to be able to identify a male because of that. That is primal. That's not something that's like a judgment thing. Like you can find that.
A fundamental difference, because here's the thing, like, yeah, this doesn't go the other way. So like for women, like we feel threatened with men in our, you know, what are supposed to be just women's only spaces, right?
Because we don't just go in the bathroom just to pee sometimes.
No, we don't. But at the same time, if you look at a men's room, well, okay, they're certainly not going to be threatened if Buck Angel walks in. They're also not going to be threatened if Blair White walks in. They're not threatened in either case.
No.
We arguably could be threatened in either. Now, I do think it would kind of be ridiculous to expect Blair White to use the men's bathroom. But the difference is she has a respect for women. She understands. She assimilates. And there's a lot of these new wave kind of, especially the middle-aged men kind of thing doing this, where it's like you're taking out your hostility and your resentment on women by like throwing on a dress and dominating the space and claiming it as a right. That's not a man. That's not trans. That's just a motherfucking douchebag who needs some serious therapy. And I'm sure that I could find empathy into why they're doing that, like 100%. But the fact is, the action, the behavior is a danger and a problem. You know?
Yeah, we have a mental health crisis happening within our country, and the solution that people are being offered is hormones and surgeries. That would be like saying that, oh, if you're bulimic or anorexic, we'll give you affirmation liposuction.
Which I think also goes into another possible reason why it doesn't get talked about nearly as much as a mental health, as trans as a mental health issue connected to gender dysphoria, is because if you're going to say that it's a mental disorder, well, it's a hell of a lot harder to market that in schools. It's a lot harder to market that as a trend, and it is a lot harder to market that as the cure to what is ailing you, when the treatment in and of itself is actually an ailment. So that's why it's seen as the cure to distress, when in fact gender dysphoria causes the distress that can lead you to become trans as treatment.
So think about how we treat other things, like we treat depression and anxiety and things like that. What do? They oftentimes are prescribing just medications for these things, instead of saying, all right, well, this needs to be you can take this and it needs to because I can speak on this because I took that stuff and I dealt with this mental health stuff myself for years. And, you know, I did do the work with therapists and stuff like that. And that is what gave me the skills to cope with what I deal with. You know what? The medications did not. and I took them and they were awful, and I took them for years, and I came off of them, and it was so hard to escape those medications. Once you were medicalized, it is really freaking hard to come off of it. But it was between 2020, it was about 2021, because of everything that we went through. We can't talk about, like, on YouTube, but with all of that, like, that's what made me realize, like, I need to come off of this stuff. I need to come off of these medications. And so I came off of them and got sick with COVID at the same time. It was not a very well period of time for me. It was really, really rough. And I'm so grateful that I had, like, Steve and my daughter to really, help me and support me through it. Cause, like, it was freaking, it was twisted, and it was really hard to go through. It was really hard to come off of those medications. But oh my gosh, like, my head is clearer and I feel better. And, like, it was a huge improvement for me to do that. And it's crazy that, I was also sucked up into propaganda and believing that was my solution, that was just the rest of my life. I was just going to have to be on medications, and, like, that was it. And now it's, you know what I mean? It's I've been off, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I did that. Like, I needed the therapy, and like, I have I have Leo as my service dog, and I use other natural things to help me with my stuff. And now imagine if they took a whole body approach to people and were like, okay, well, let's look at your health. Let's look at what you're eating. Let's look at your environment. Let's look at all these other things that are happening. And what if they took a whole wellness approach to it, instead of saying, here's hormones on your first visit, and, like, put you on a path to surgery? If it was approached differently, I think that we would have completely different outcomes.
You're 100% right. And the reason they don't, I think, is twofold. One, there's a lot of money in the way that they're doing it. There is a lot of political backing in the way that they're doing it. You are basically creating an army of youth that are going to be loyal to the Democratic Party no matter what that party does.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing is that, from the activist perspective, trans has,
it's a forever activism.
Yeah, it's forever activism, and it's become I would say it's become seen as, like, spiritual. So how dare you try to talk someone out of it? That is a conversion therapy. That is anti-trans. That is hateful. So it
checks all the boxes. It literally checks all the boxes. It's the perfect thing for them to push. And I'm like, wait a minute, we need to slow this down. That, like, I'm seeing all this happening, and, like, I think because we started out with, like, acceptance and love, and it was like, oh, it was LGBT, and then they added the T to it, and it was like, oh yeah, we're being supportive, and, like, so it kind of, like, it morphed together, and then they were like, okay, we'll give them this right to marry, and then it was like, okay, we're gonna keep going with the rest of it. And that's exactly what happened. If you look at the timeline, like, I like to, like, lay out timelines when I'm looking at stuff, like, how did this happen? When did this happen? What were the steps that took place in order to get us to where we're at? And, like, that's, like, it's just astonishing when you look back and go, holy shit, they integrated us into this perfectly. They literally, and they're just pushing it. This is the icing on the cake right now. What they're doing with the language, this is right now, this is what it is, because they're saying, look, we know the human rights is pushing this to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm. When you have decided, that everything that came before everything is rooted in white supremacy. Everything is racist. Everything is sexist. Everything is transphobic. Everything is problematic. It's like this effort to tear down absolutely everything. You know, when I see politicians like literally trying to be like, well, the Constitution was written by people who owned slaves. It's like, yes.
Actually, it was stolen. Actually, the Constitution, all of it was stolen from Native people and how they ran their tribes and how they ran all that. That's what it was taken from. It was taken. It wasn't, they didn't like, these guys didn't like just come up with it themselves.
But it's like, whether it's the Constitution, whether it's the Bill of Rights, whether it's the Declaration of Independence, it doesn't matter. It's all like, oh, well, it has this horrible history, it was written by horrible people, so therefore everything in it is horrible. We need to completely, and it's like, no, this doesn't make any sense. Like, that one, find me one writing document, one historical event, one revolution, one something that does not have horror attached to it. You can't. That's not how. But again, that goes back to just this purity obsession, and I think it's all kind of it collides with the gender stuff. And you know, one of the last things I'll say, I feel like I've held you captive forever. I can't, if there's anyone still listening, I'm they deserve a medal. But one thing I'll say too is that I don't remember what Adderall induced speech this was that Biden gave a few months back, but one of the times where they, you know, propped him up in front of a podium, he had said something that I felt was so alarming, and I'm like, we should probably pay attention to this, where he basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was saying that racism, anti-Semitism, transphobia, blah, 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 it's all one. It's all, so my point is, you're selling this package of what it means to be a good person, to be a good leftist, to be, and it's going to be what the Democratic Party tells you it is, and those who sort of are on the suburbs of the Democratic Party. So it's like, oh, you know, how long until it's like, oh, well, if you don't support the war, you're transphobic. If you don't vote this way, you're transphobic. If you do this, you're a racist. If he's saying it's all one thing, I feel like this has become the issue that is being used to manufacture consent for whatever the hell that they want.
Yeah, they're setting us up for something. You know, this is I think it's about power and control, and getting a control of the population and keeping us fighting amongst ourselves over things that are not based in like reality, because then if we're fighting about this, then we're not fighting them. So to me, I'm like, we can't fight them until we fucking figure out some of this shit, because this right here will continue to grow, and they remain in power and control. That's the thing. Is that if we don't have healthy people that are like, that people are aware and healthy and willing to fight back, and that can like stand in solidarity with each other, actually stand in solidarity with each other, then we're never going to get anywhere.
Knowing that doing that is going to get you called a whole bunch of names. You're going to be labeled a transphobe, the people who are sucked into this, who are actually in it, who are actually true believers, many of them, all of them, they will call themselves like diehard leftists. It's like, you have to be willing to be like, just shrug your shoulders and be like, all right, you know, call me what you want. I can't, you know, because again, it's a big weaponization of empathy. Like, oh, don't be mean to trans people. No one wants to be mean to trans people. We're criticizing an ideology and some very extreme people that are
pushing it and that believe it. Yes, we're not criticizing every individual trans person.
No, standing
it's
up
where
for
it's
them.
sourced from. It's coming from somewhere. This isn't if this was normal, and we're not saying that trans people won't exist or that people won't transition. It's
No,
gonna
that's
happen.
what
It
they're
has
joking
for a
about.
long time. We're not trying to erase anybody. We're not trying to hate on anybody. Like that's the difference, and that's the difference between what you'll hear from the more conservative side and what you'll hear from the right, from the left extremists and the TRAs, the trans rights activists that are not trans people, that are the activists that are just like brutal like about this. It's like they will literally, you know what I mean? They will literally come at you and act as though, you are just the most wrong and hateful person and call you all kinds of names and this and that. I'm like, I'm not calling people names. I'm not being rude. I'm not like, you know what I mean? I'm not doing this to anybody. Like, I'm talking about the truth and the reality of it. And that doesn't make it hateful. Just because you don't want to hear that reality, just because you're like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that it's wrong for me to say it. Doesn't mean it's wrong for me to have this opinion. There's a lot of people that come to me privately and will say, thank you for speaking up because I don't feel like I can. Because I know I'll get attacked and I know I should speak up, but I can't speak up for whatever reason.
Do you see that bill in Michigan that is like literally making misgendering and pronoun noncompliance a felony that carries fines and prison time? Prison time. So this is not just I'm like, oh, you're overreacting. Oh, we can write this off as silly culture war. Well, that silly culture war is having some very real legislative consequences.
Yeah, like even right here, this is in Portland. Like it says the guide suggested removing femininity from terms commonly used for women, including replacing pregnant women with pregnant people, to be inclusive to those who have this experience of pregnancy but do not identify as women. You would think that would make you even more gender dysphoric, and make that worse to be a person that has a pregnancy if you think you're a man, because it is inherently a female thing to have babies. There is no man that has had a baby. That would be a scientific miracle. That would be on every freaking paper. That would be everywhere. If a man got pregnant, please show me this man that got pregnant, an actual biological male, because they would be a freaking science experiment.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like we've been talking for 3 hours and I feel like we could easily go another 3 hours because there's so much to say. But I think that I feel like everyone's eyes are probably starting to glaze over. And I'm so grateful that you had me on. I hope I didn't talk too much. I
enjoyed it. I thought like Steve was like, I'm just gonna go. Like, you guys have chemistry. You guys are talking. He was like, I'm just gonna go. And like, yeah.
I didn't hear Steve.
Yeah, no, he was here for a little bit, and then I think he went upstairs and like is probably watching upstairs. Like, no, and he does that sometimes, and he gets overwhelmed sometimes by this topic. So it's really good for me to have somebody to express this with, because it feels like we're in like this upside down world of things, and it's like, this shouldn't even be things that we have to be talking about, because this is, you look at history, it's only happening in certain countries that this is happening.
It's the West.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, okay, so what do we have in common as the West? You know what I mean? Like, who is controlling this? Who is pushing this? Who is doing this? Because other countries don't have this. They don't have this same issue. That makes it an agenda. It shows that it's a social contagion, and there was one more thing that I wanted to, I'll have the link for it. below. I know we're gonna have to do another show because
like a part 2 or something.
yes,
Because I feel like honestly the school aspect is its own episode.
oh yeah, I know. I've been looking into a lot of the school stuff, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But here's about our military. So they're saying, Lady Alex sent this over to me, and I added it in for tonight's show, and I was like, what? So they're saying transgender men should register for the military draft if they want to be treated like men, the GOP rep said. So this is from the 8th, and this is Rep Tim Burchett, a Republican from Tennessee. And he said that he has a proposal that would require biological women who identify as men to register with selective service in case the U.S. ever has another military draft.
So he sounds like he's making the point where it's like, if you really want to be treated like men, then you do what other men do and you register for selective service like everybody else. Interesting. Yeah. So that sort of is I would be interested to know what trans activists would think of that, because in that instance, you can make the argument that this man is actually legitimizing. He's saying, okay, trans women are women, trans men are men. This is what men do. Come do it. Like you.
Yeah, he's legitimizing trans people. A Republican is legitimizing trans people.
Right. So I would be curious to see the
reaction to this. Like, what does this mean?
Because it's a Republican, it's automatically going to be like, no, there is something deeply transphobic about this, right? Because it's never about what is being said. It is about who is saying it, what team are they on, and even beyond that, it's more like, what symbolic meaning can we take from what you're saying and categorize you and then dismiss you, you know?
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to expose this right here, the reaction to, you know what I mean, to this article, and him proposing this is going to expose whether or not they're just going to resist it because he's a Republican, or they're going to say, yeah, then that should be the case.
Right.
So it's a really defining bill. He's saying that, you know what I mean, if you are, you know, he said he put an amendment in the bill that authorizes the Department of Defense spending and policy priorities for the next fiscal year that would change the requirements to register for selective service as defining a male person and male citizen of the United States to include transgender person who identifies as male. So, you know, that right there, I think this is something to keep. There's a couple things that I brought up for tonight's show that we should keep our eyes out. We need to keep our eyes out on programs like WIC. Are they going to change that language? Because if they're going to change it where, you know, like, are they going to change the language here then too? You know what I mean? So he's like, I'm being inclusive of transgender people. Are they going to adapt this? And then are they also going to adapt that? And this will kind of like, I know that signing for a draft and whether or not you can get extra nutrition are different things, but they are in the same category because it is for people that are changing their ID of who they identify as, and their because people are changing their birth certificates.
I know. Mm.
So I mean, like it makes sense. Like, okay, so like, you know, and how long do you have to, you know, like how long do you have to be transitioned or not transit? Like, and what if you decide to untransition? Can you just decide to detransition? Like, because where does that go? You know what I mean? Like, oh, if suddenly there is a draft, are they just going to say, no, I detransition, I want to go back to female? And then they get excused?
I mean, these are all good questions. Like, that's the thing is like, with all of this, it's like, well, where does this ultimately lead?
I don't know. That's like where, you know.
Man, well, we have a lot to keep our eye on. I'm so grateful that you had me on your show. I'm so flattered, and you're so awesome, and I adore you so much. And so thank you. And
Thank you for coming on.
keep,
I tell everybody, like, nobody's nobody's allowed to, like, you know, to avoid the draft of like coming on the show. Like, I think that we have an amazing community, and everybody has, you know what I mean, everybody has strengths, everybody has talents, everybody has information and knowledge and opinions, and we should be sharing them with each other. We should be having this discourse. We don't have to agree on everything.
I love that you do, and I love that you bring on, like, just, you know, nobody is like, I love it. And so again, I'm so grateful.
But you aren't nobodies, you are somebodies, and that's what I prove. I prove that you are somebodies. That's
show. I kind of feel a little bit like a somebody tonight. I do.
You should.
But thank you. And yeah, you just keep doing your thing, and you know, shouting on Twitter. Oh, that was so nice. I gotta thank you. That I just, wow. Yes. So hopefully, like, you know, if you ever want to do this again, I would gladly.
Yeah, we're gonna do it again. Like,
Okay.
I'm roping you in. You guys heard her. She's coming back. So be prepared. No, I'm excited for it. I think that it's great. And, you know, like, I think it's great that people are like, you know, I think it's funny when people are like nervous about coming on, and then they come on and they're like, holy shit, like 3 hours went by and it felt like nothing. Like, I always tell people, like, you know, I usually do like between an hour and 3, wherever we land in there. And that's about what I had for information for us for tonight.
It was
and
great.
There's going to be more links that we'll be adding. There's some things that we didn't get to, but if you follow the links, I kind of like, I'll put them in there, and I kind of like label what the little things are and stuff, so you can kind of, you know, go through if you want to check it out and see the sources and read all the articles. Well, thank you, everybody. Please hit the like and subscribe and share this. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. All right, love.
All right, stay right there for 1 minute. All right. Good night, everybody.